House Targail. It was a name once known as the Emperor's Sword and the glory of the Empire. However, when the name no longer had any significance, it fell. Well, maybe saying it fell would not be accurate. It hit rock bottom. That's why Hergenies Targail, the eldest daughter of House Targail, was ordered to marry a man chosen by the Emperor. Now, Hergenies was not happy with that order, but the interesting part was that she was thinking that an arranged marriage would be impossible to imagine in Korea. Obviously, those thoughts would not make any sense for a normal woman in a swords and magic world. However, Hergenies was clearly not a normal woman. Nevertheless, while our blonde female protagonist was thinking about the modern world, her now fiancé was discussing the ground rules of their future married life. Those rules covered a wide range of things, such as establishing Kyroxis as the middle name, sleeping together only once a week for their successor's sake, not intervening in each other's matters, and not begging for affection or love. Of course, it was hard to tell how much attention was Hergenies paying, since she was very focused on thinking that if her family was powerful like before, she would have not agreed to that. Sadly, they became powerless during her generation. Luckily, not everything was bad since the woman considered that her husband-to-be was extremely good-looking. After all, the possibility of being forced to marry some wrinkly geezer was very real. However, in that scenario, the blonde lady would have lost it and wiped out the imperial family. Well, at least, that was what she thought. Nevertheless, despite his good looks, her fiancé had a serious attitude problem. It was obvious that she had been observing and analyzing him, and she noticed how confident he was about making her fall for him. Hergenies really looked like she had everything under control at that moment, but when the man asked her if there was something she'd like to say, the mask broke apart completely. The blonde woman immediately got nervous and grabbed the contract he had prepared in order to read it as fast as possible, because she knew that was her only chance at a rebuttal. Of course, Hergenies didn't allow her nervousness to get the best of her. She quickly regained control and even started to change some of the rules the man pretended to establish. However, those changes were not expected at all by him. Sleeping once a week? How about once a month instead? Having breakfast together every morning? Totally unnecessary. Respecting each other's personal time? That needed to be emphasized. The man almost tripped and started flinching due to his surprise. However, Hergenies was not planning of letting him go, and she kept making changes in every rule he had proposed. She even went as far as to complain about the way he was talking to her, since until they get married, she was still of higher status than him, so talking down to her was totally inappropriate. It was at this moment when our female protagonist started narrating her life in that new world since the beginning. She was born in that world with her memories of her past life. In that previous life, she had been born into a wealthy family in Korea. After practicing kendo, which she had a talent for at that time, she took on fencing by chance. That led her to become a member of the national fencing team. Sadly, as she was preparing for the Olympics, a jealous team member pushed her down the stairs, ending her life at a young age without even a chance to win a medal. Afterwards, she was reborn as part of House Targail. House Targail was known as the Emperor's Sword. In each generation, a child with talent in swordsmanship was born. Nevertheless, for unknown reasons, a child with such talent had not been born into the family for quite some time. Then her brother Estienne was born, but even he wasn't talented with a sword. Years went by, and their parents passed away while they were still young, and the family business also failed, putting them in debt. They asked for the imperial family's help, but they refused them every time. The Order of Targail was also disbanded. They sold everything they had to survive, barely paying off their debt, and all that was left in their huge state were just Estienne and her. As the older sister, she was aware that she needed to make money to feed her brother and keep their state. The thing was how she was going to do that. Of course, she could have gotten married to a rich merchant, but the thought of that alone disgusted her, since they were not her type, and she didn't want to throw her life away that easily. However, what could a daughter of a count do to make a living? In that moment, she had the idea of trying something with a sword, since she had wielded one in her past life, and the moment she went to the storage and grabbed a training sword, she felt chills going down her spine. It was as if she'd held a sword all her life. In the end, she came to a huge realization. The one who had the talent had been her all along. Sadly, during all that time, her brother Estienne blamed himself for all that had happened. Nevertheless, she couldn't let him know about that yet, since there was no way a woman could become a knight in that world. That's why after spending several days thinking about the whole matter, she came to the conclusion that she should do whatever she could to keep them afloat. So after sending Estienne to his school's dormitory, she decided to become a mercenary. In order to do that, she had to cut and dye her hair and bound her chest to be able to head to the battlefield and make money. Becoming a mercenary was easy for her because every battlefield always had a demand for human shields, and no one asked where she was from or who she was. Furthermore, she ended up siding with the Valar army, and they paid her a lot, plus she was familiar with that area. Of course, the mercenary life was not easy. Despite her disguise, many men found her feminine enough to start harassing her. Fortunately, she had enough strength to beat the crap out of them in order to set an example and keep them in check. In fact, people started calling her the pretty-faced monster, which ended up becoming her nickname. Actually, her fame started growing to the point the rumors reached the ears of Sean Kyroxis' troops. Yes, the troops of the guy who would eventually become her fiancé. Year 994, Enoch's calendar. Battle of Kirkla. The whole battlefield was a huge mess with blood everywhere and screams covering the entire area. In the middle of that chaos, Hergenes, still dressed like a man, was fighting against multiple enemies. Fortunately, thanks to her speed, agility, and graceful movements, she managed to defeat them time and time again. Sadly, they were outnumbered, and eventually the retreat order came, so she didn't hesitate to follow it, since she didn't want to die there. However, while she was running away, she saw a weird scene. A Valuarian knight was charging toward one of his own. It was a treacherous attack, and that was why the victim didn't see it coming and fell, while the other yelled he hoped his victim rotted and died there. Hergens at the beginning tried to ignore the whole thing since that was not of her business. However, her kindness got the best of her, and she ended up helping the victim. Luckily, the man was still alive and conscious, so she picked him up off the floor and took him away. Sometime later, she treated his wounds the best she could and managed to stop the bleeding. Of course, his condition made the man rave about killing everybody, which made Hergenes to wonder what wrong he had done to deserve that. Finally, the man woke up, and after confirming she was a mercenary and a dude, she asked him why he had saved him. Hergenes replied she did it for no particular reason, and after telling him he was on his own from that moment on and leaving him a piece of bread, she prepared to leave, but the man asked what was her name. Hergenes answered he should tell him his name before that, to what the other replied, Sean Kyroxis. That surprised the woman since she didn't expect a direct answer, but she still fulfilled her part of the deal and told him his name was Herge. Afterwards, she left him without knowing that the man she just happened to save that day would later become her future husband. Sometime later, Hergenes was eating in a tavern, and some people near her were discussing how Sean Kyroxis had been rising through the ranks despite his humble beginnings, to the point he was leading the knights into battle in recent times. However, she couldn't keep listening to that conversation because a red-haired guy suddenly entered, and after confirming he was the pretty-faced monster, he decided to challenge our protagonist to a duel. Hergenes took her sword in one hand and a dagger in the other, which surprised the red-haired guy, who was not expecting his opponent was a dual-wielding warrior. However, he was still confident, and he even asked his opponent how he was planning to block his attacks. Hergenes, on the other hand, simply told him he was going to fall. And he did. The red-haired guy was so impressed that after introducing himself as Tarkun, he offered him to become his partner. He even went as far as saying he was willing to become his partner if he preferred it that way, but both offers were rejected by Hergenes. Sometime later, our protagonist was in the middle of another battle when she suddenly sensed danger and quickly dodged some arrows. Afterwards, she located the archer and climbed a small mountain in order to get him. The archer shot several arrows, but all of them were evaded by Hergenes, who ended up beating the other. The archer begged for mercy, and Hergenes didn't kill him. Then the other asked how he had dodged all the arrows, to what Hergenes replied he was not aiming correctly. Afterwards, the archer introduced himself as Rafine and said he would follow his orders from now on, since he had spared his life. And he meant it because he abandoned his guild to follow her and didn't hesitate to fight Tarkun, the red-haired guy, over the seniority rights of being Hergenes' subordinate. Later on, some acquaintances of Hergenes caught red-handed a woman who had been disguising as a man and tried to harass her, but our protagonist and her two subordinates stopped them. The woman thanked her savior, and Hergenes didn't hesitate in revealing she was also a lady, so the other girl, who was also red-haired, asked if she could join her. Our protagonist asked her what she could do, and the other replied she was an alchemist. That surprised Hergenes since she didn't know what the other girl was doing there, since she was not a soldier or a mercenary. Luckily, the red-haired woman guessed what our protagonist was thinking and said she was looking for a vital ingredient from around there. Hergenes then accepted her. In fact, our protagonist decided to form a mercenary group called Elizur, since she already had 3 subordinates. As Elizur, they took part in the 100-year war and stood by the highest bidder. Their involvement made both Valois and Haglatin nervous, and as the name Elizur started to get recognized, the Battle of Sean and Elizur occurred. However, in the end, Hergenes decided to head back instead of fighting him, which took Rafine, Tarkun, and Ivana, the red-haired woman, by surprise. Tarkun even asked why she was doing that. But the thing was that Hergenes herself didn't know why she was avoiding him. In the end, the battle started while Elizir was still in the battlefield, so they were forced to fight. And they could witness how strong Sean was, and why he was also called Monster and the demon of the battlefield. Actually, Hergenes was just flabbergasted watching how amazing Sean was on the battlefield. In fact, she not only noticed he was on another level, but also noticed he was even skilled in weapons that were not his. Sadly, Ivana made our protagonist to come back to her senses, because in the end, the whole thing was a trap to get them. Their side had retreated, and they were the only ones left. The quartet ended up being surrounded, and the leader of their enemies told them if they sided with Hegleton, their lives would be spared. However, Hergenes noticed Sean was also with them, and she asked what the other were planning to do with him, and the people from Hegleton didn't hesitate in saying they wanted him dead, since he was a monster and a demon. Our protagonist was not dumb, and she knew the best choice in that moment was siding with Hegleton, but she couldn't make the decision, and instead, she just stared at him. Sean stared back, but then she shook his head, and Hergenes, people started asking her what was the plan while their enemies keep pressuring them into making a choice. However, Hergenes kept hesitating. She knew joining Hegleton was the right thing to do. Her brother needed the money after all. Besides, she had to think about her partners too. The answer was pretty obvious, but she just kept thinking about him. Luckily, her partners saw through her and helped her by saying they didn't want to join Hegleton. Our protagonist was moved by their gesture, so after apologizing to them, she gave the order, and Elizir began protecting Sean, who got shocked by that move. He asked Hergenes why they were doing this, but she just said there was no particular reason. The battle started, but Sean made a move that almost got Hergenes injured, so our protagonist almost immediately put his dagger on his throat and told him that if he put him in danger again, he would kill him. Sean kept silent, and the battle resumed. But Hergenes noticed that she and Sean had a synergy so strong while fighting that one would think they had been fighting alongside each other for ages. It was as if their souls were one. That day, the Hegleton army was close to annihilation. Yes, the 5 of them did that. That unbelievable story was told by the soldiers who survived it. As a result, the morale of the Valois army rose while Hegleton's diminished. That battle was called the Battle of Sean and Elizir. Thanks to that incident, the Valois Empire was able to win and bring peace by ending the war, and Hergenes had no interaction with Sean after that. They were not friends after all, as the captain of Elizir, Hergenes earned all the money she could and used it to pay off the fees for Estienne's tuition and their state's maintenance. Then one day, she received a message from back home. Her brother had fallen off a horse. Of course, she decided to head back home, so she informed her partners of her decision. At the beginning, they thought their captain was going to disband the group, but he denied it, saying he would keep in touch. Hergenes promised them they would meet again, so he was going to leave Elizir in their hands until then. Rafine, Ivana, and Tarkun got emotional, but in the end they parted ways. What Hergenes didn't expect was that Sean was waiting for her on the road. He asked him where he was going, and our protagonist replied, someone was waiting for him. Sean then told him to stay there, but he refused, saying he should go. Sean insisted, saying that was military insubordination, and that he could have him court-martialed as his deputy commander. Hergenes asked him to let him go, but Sean refused. Our protagonist insisted, saying they were no longer needed, but Sean replied he didn't care about Elizir, and added he only cared about him. Hergenes laughed his ass loud after hearing that, while saying Sean was quite the romantic. He then added he should pay him later for saving him, so he asked him not to die until then. Sean replied he would try, and he finally let our protagonist go. In the end, over the past 3 years, Hergenes had only met Sean 3 times. However, she was aware she would never be able to forget those moments. In fact, she hoped that if they ever met again after the war, they could have a proper duel to find out who was better, and after that, have a drink together and talk. Of course, she did not expect the 2 of them to reunite in the form of marriage. Fortunately, Estienne was not hurt badly, and she even thought she could finally live freely with all the money that she made as part of Elizir. However, the Imperial Order ruined everything. Hergenes couldn't help but complain that out of all the suitors available, it just had to be Sean Kyroxis. She couldn't forgive Prince Raymond for using her family name to make Sean a count. She was also a war hero after all. Didn't she deserve a reward? And to add insult to injury, she had to make sure Sean didn't recognize her. In that moment, Sean arrived, and we finally returned to where we were at the beginning of the story, with Hergenes complaining about the way Sean was talking to her. Sean immediately apologized and assured her he would try his best to adjust the clauses and send them over to her. Sean then asked her about her younger brother, saying he wanted to meet him sometime. which took our protagonist by surprise. Hergenes and Sean kept talking, but our protagonist was almost certain that the man was suspecting something. She had thought he wouldn't, especially because of her hair, but it appeared he had noticed something. The thing was, she couldn't tell him she was Hergé from Elizur. It wouldn't be good if people discovered that the daughter of House Targael was a mercenary, especially since the Valar Empire had been paying Elizur a lot of money after the war. They were probably waiting for a chance to get back at them. And on top of that, Sean Kyroxis was best friend with Raymond the Crown Prince. Not to mention, everyone in Elizur could be in trouble if they found out she was Herg. Our protagonist then replied, Estienne was a student in Ak University, so Sean would be able to meet him at the wedding. That revelation surprised Sean, who immediately asked if Estienne had deep blue eyes like her, to which Hergenes said her brother's eye color was a lighter sky blue. Sometime later, Sean was having tea with Raymond, who asked his friend about his thoughts on Lady Hergenes Targael. Sean said she reminded him of someone he knew, an answer that was not expected by the prince. However, Sean kept thinking that Hergenes was very similar to Herge. Even though she was a woman and her hair color was different, she reminded him of the man who left quite an impression and a debt he would never be able to repay. Of course, the prince didn't know the whole story, so he asked him how Hergenes could remind him of a lady he already knew, and then started teasing him, saying the innocent lady would be marrying the bad boy. That comment amused Sean, because Hergenes was nothing like the ladies he had met until then. She was headstrong for a daughter of a noble family, to the point she even amended the marriage contract with the tenacity of a mercenary. Luckily, Raymond didn't notice Sean's thoughts and asked him to not divorce her and stay by her side even if he didn't want to, or else it would complicate things regarding his title. Sean then reassured him by saying he kept personal matters out of his work. Somewhere else, Hergenes was inside a carriage and suddenly ordered the coachman to stop the vehicle, since she had personal matters to attend to somewhere nearby. Sometime later, Hergenes, covering herself with a hood to not be recognized, arrived at the place where her partners were, and when she saw them, she greeted them with happiness, which took Rafine and Tarkun by surprise. Of course, Ivana was the first to react, since she already knew the secret, and although she didn't know how the captain really looked, it was easy for her to connect the dots after seeing the behavior of the woman who had come. Rafine was the second to figure out who was the woman, since he already was suspicious. But Tarkun was completely lost. He even thought Hergenes was the captain's sister. When the red-haired guy was finally told the truth, our protagonist revealed the purpose of her visit. She wanted to reveal her secret and also tell them she was getting married. Of course, that second blow shocked the trio, especially when their captain said her future husband was Sean Kyroxis. Ivana even thought she was being forced and offered herself to end the life of the bastard. Tarkun then thought that was the reason why she hesitated at the Battle of Sean and Elizur. He thought the reason was they already knew each other by that time. Hergenes tried to deny the whole thing, but Rafine interrupted her, saying there was still one thing she hadn't explained to them. In fact, the trio had heard about Sean's marriage, but they had heard he was going to marry someone from House Targael. Hergenes then sighed, and after apologizing for keeping it a secret the whole time, she finally revealed her real name. However, Hergenes quickly tried to explain things were not that simple since she was a woman, but Rafine interrupted, saying he understood. They would make a mockery out of House Targael if they found out that a woman had been born with that talent. In that moment, Tarkun finally understood everything, and Ivana reprimanded him for being slow. Of course, the trio also realized people would be more surprised if they found out that Herge of Elizur was a woman. For that reason, Hergend asked them to keep the secret, and the others told him she didn't have to worry about it. Ivana then offered Hergenes she would make a liquid bomb in case Kyroxis did anything stupid, but our protagonist replied that wouldn't be necessary. Rafine then offered to keep watch nearby and shoot him with his arrow, but Hergenes also refused since he would get caught. Finally, Tarkun said he would challenge Sean to a duel, but our protagonist replied he would probably lose, making the red-haired guy sad. In the end, the quartet kept on drinking and enjoying each other's company for a while, and her partners told Hergenes that if she ever wanted to run away in the middle of the night, she knew where to find them since they would help her even if they didn't stand a chance. Sometime later, Estienne returned home, and Hergenes greeted him with joy, since she was very happy to see her little brother. However, the boy didn't waste time and asked her why she was getting married, worried that the whole thing was his fault for not being good with a sword. Estienne then got emotional and promised his sister he would do his best to stay at the top of his class that semester. The siblings then started to chat about the marriage, but they were interrupted by Sean, who just arrived to the state. Sean stared at the boy intensely, and Hergenes realized he had come to check if Estienne was Herg. In fact, she thought he had run all the way there to check that, just in case he ran away. Sean then had a cup of tea, and our protagonist asked him why he had come to, which Sean said he wanted to see her for a quick moment, and since he already had, he would be on his way. That behavior didn't please Hergenis at all because she thought that was too convenient. However, Sean added insult to injury by asking her if she was not going to see him out. Hergenis got pissed then, since he was the one who had showed up in the first place. Nevertheless, in the end she agreed, and while they both were walking outside, she ended up admitting that, despite having quite the temper, he was sure stunning. Not to mention his skin was nicely toned. Hergenis then was brought back to reality because Sean grabbed her by her waist and almost immediately got really close to her as if he was going to kiss her. Our protagonist didn't know how to react, but in the end, she decided to let herself go, and after closing her eyes, she got ready for the kiss. However, Sean took her hand and told her that for a noble lady, she had some rough hands. Our protagonist immediately got nervous, thinking he knew her secret all along, but then she also thought that maybe he was testing her, because if he was so sure that she was hers, he would have probably thrown a sword at her instead of using that roundabout approach. Hergenis then told him that her family was not wealth compared to other nobles, so she had had to work to survive despite being a noble lady. Of course, saying all that while being so close to him was not easy at all. Sean then hugged her, which made her flinch, and afterwards asked her what kind of work while whispering in her ear. Hergenis finally had enough, and after pushing him away, she told him they were not a married couple yet, to which the man replied, while chuckling, she was stronger than she looked. Nevertheless, our protagonist didn't let go what had happened and told him he had no right to handle her the way he wanted. The man replied he would have the right after the marriage, but Hergenis made very clear he wouldn't ever have the right to do so. However, instead of getting angry, Sean started laughing and replied he was looking forward to it. Sometime later, a red-haired woman entered like a storm in Sean's study. In fact, his butler had to apologize to him because he couldn't stop her. However, Sean remained composed even when the lady asked him, by screaming at him, if he was really getting married. The knights then said to the woman called Cecilia that that was not the time for small talk. Nevertheless, the lady ignored his words and told him no one knew what Hergenis sold while doing business overseas. She went as far as to add that for all they knew, it might not just be material goods. Sean then made her notice those were some harsh words. Nevertheless, Cecilia didn't take the hint, and after leaning towards the knight in a provocative way, she even told him she didn't care if he got married. The woman even started to undress, trying to seduce the knight, but Sean's reaction was not what she expected, because he asked her since when was she given the authority to do as she pleases. The knight then added that he could only tolerate her disrespectful attitude for so long, which made the butler to do a huge effort to contain his laughter. Of course, that displeased Cecilia, who quickly left the study while harumphing. She even slammed the door. After she left, the butler told Sean that apparently Lady Cecilia had fought with her father, Count Epernon, about marrying him recently. Nevertheless, that information barely interested the knight, who instead asked if Reeve was back since he needed to go see him. The butler replied he was not back, and then Sean asked about Elazar, and the other said they were still working without their captain. However, he added that it seemed like they had gathered in secret recently, and Herg was also present. The knight then asked what the other had found about House Targael, and the butler proceeded to report his findings. According to his investigation, in the year 994 of the Enex calendar, their parents passed away, and their son Estienne entered Ak University. The whereabouts of Hergenis Targael at that time were unknown, although he was told that she had lived overseas for business reasons. Then, in the year 996, she came back to the Valois Empire and hadn't left since. Sean then asked if Ak wasn't known for its high tuition. Unfortunately, after apologizing, the butler replied that they still hadn't exactly figured that part out. However, he added they were doing their best to look into it. Sean then started to think it was not easy trying to find people after the war, since most of them never make it back. Afterwards, he started to wonder what would have happened if he would have told Herg to stay at that time. Sean wanted to ask Herg why he had saved him that time, although he was pretty sure the other probably would have smiled and answered no reason. The butler then got bold enough to ask the knight if he was suspecting that Lady Hergenis might be Herg. However, although the question surprised him, Sean replied sincerely, saying he was not sure. In fact, he added that he would like to see her wielding a sword. The butler then said that there was something rather trivial from that day's report. Apparently, he had been informed that Master Harvin was currently in the process of making a rapier and a main gauche. Of course, that piqued Sean's attention since those were Herg's weapons. Not to mention, he was surprised Master Harvin had accepted the order, because last time he placed an order that cranky old man didn't even bother listening to him. Sean then recalled that Master Harvin only crafted weapons for those who were truly skilled, which could mean only one thing. The knight then ordered the butler to keep watch on the smith's shop. Sometime later in that smith's shop, Hergenis arrived, and Harvin greeted her with a smile. He even told her that he thought he had created a masterpiece. He went as far as to add some decorations fit for a lady and ask a friend to make a pretty case and belt for her. Hergenius was really pleased with that, and she started remembering how they had met 1 year before. Of course, at that time, Harvin mocked her after she told him she wanted him to make a rapier and a main gauche for her. He then threw her a wooden stick and asked her to show her skills. It was then Hergenius' turn to mock Harvin, and after purposely pretending she didn't know what to do, she suddenly executed a powerful thrust that impressed the smith. Harvin even told her she was the second, because the first was Sean Kyroxith. That revelation made her flinch, and she asked if he was making a sword for him, and when Harvin said he wasn't, she then asked him why not. The smith then told her that he didn't need one, because for Sean, it didn't matter if the sword he wielded was made by the greatest blacksmiths in the world, or a cheap one from the bin. Hergenius didn't fully get the explanation, but at least got relieved, thinking he was not going to the shop to pick up a sword. In the end, she asked him if he would still accept the order, and the smith said he would, although it might take a while. Harvin then asked her where to send the weapons, and she replied to House Targil, which shocked the smith. Back to the present, Harvin showed both weapons to Hergenius, whose eyes were literally shining, since she thought they were gorgeous. However, in that moment someone knocked the door and our protagonist froze when she discovered the man who was knocking was Sean. Hergenius quickly regained her composure and hid inside the shop in time, so when Sean entered he didn't see her. Our protagonist then decided to leave the shop through the back door, but then she realized the knight had brought his men with him. In the meantime, Sean asked Harvin if he could make him a sword, and the other refused. However, in that moment the knight said there were rumors that the smith was working on a new sword recently, and he then asked what sword he was making. Harvin replied that he was working on a rapier and a main gauche, which shocked Hergenius. Sean then asked who had placed the order, but the smith didn't say anything. The knight then said that wielding a rapier and a main gauche together was not that easy. He even added that those two things paired together sounded ridiculous. Finally, he said that only someone with a lot of experience and talent in swordsmanship could manage such an unorthodox way of fighting. In the end, there was only one person out there who could do that, Herge of the mercenary group Elizur. However, Harvin remained silent, which Hergenius deeply appreciated. The woman then thought she would leave right after Sean. Sadly, the knight found out the back door of the shop was open, and that was the cue for our protagonist to act. She tore apart his dress to move better, used the fabric she got from that as a scarf, put on the hood, grabbed the case with the weapons, left the shop, threw the case as high as she could, and beat Sean's men in order to escape. Afterwards, she caught the case, and when she was about to leave the area, Sean caught up with him and asked him why he was running away. He then said he thought of him as a friend, and then added that if he thought the same, he would be grateful if he told him the truth and turn around so that he could see him. Sadly, Hergenius kept quiet, and Sean got angry thinking that was his answer. The worst part was that Hergenius was dying to tell him the whole truth, that she was Hergenius, the lady he was about to marry. But unfortunately, that was something she couldn't decide on her own, because if people found out she was Herge, both House Targil and Elizur would be in danger. In the end, she clenched her right fist, which was the one grabbing the case, and decided to leave the place, leaving a desolate night in the process. Sometime later, a butler was reporting Prince Raymond the Enec's followers had been roaming around the empire recently. That puzzled the prince since he hadn't heard anything about the Illwoods passing away, so he asked if the followers were roaming beyond the holy city of Anexian. Enixism was a religion accepted in many nations. A high priest called Illwoods listened for the voice of God and preached what had been said. The prince then said that the followers only left the city when it was time to search for a new Illwoods, and the butler replied that all the other countries were as confused as they were. Afterwards, the butler showed the prince a new bill sent by Elizur, which surprised Raymond. After seeing the others' reaction, the butler said that they had a lot of expenses to pay in recent times since the war was over. He then added that Elizur might side with Heglatin if he didn't sign it since they had already been eyed by them. Raymond still complained about the whole thing because they have even offered them positions in their order of knights, but all they seemed to want was money. He then asked the butler what had Elizur been up to lately, to which the other replied they were still active, but they were only taking small jobs. The prince then said that if Elizur ceased to exist, then they wouldn't need to pay them. That statement shocked the butler, who quickly replied that the last thing they wanted was for them to be their enemy. Raymond then said that he was joking and ordered him to pay them and keep a watch on their whereabouts. The butler then left, and the prince thought he might need to talk to Sean about that. In the meantime, in Targail's state, Hergenius was thinking about the last encounter with Sean and concluded that perhaps it had been a good thing that she had run away. Besides, preparation for the wedding were going as planned. In that moment, Estienne arrived, and our protagonist grabbed his hands, noticing some scars on his wrists. She then thought that it was all because she had the talent and not him, so she was the one to blame for those scars. She then remembered when his little brother tried to commit suicide because he couldn't stand the fact of not being talented with a sword and not being able to save their family. Back to the present, Estienne apologized to her sister because it was his fault that she had to go through that arranged marriage. Hurgens then said that it was okay because she had agreed to that, so he didn't have to blame himself. Sometime later, our protagonist was already wearing her wedding dress while thinking she couldn't believe she was getting married, that she was hungry, and that the corset was killing her. However, she gathered her strength and went to the place where the ceremony would take place while being escorted by his little brother. She then was received by Sean and started getting nervous while thinking he was looking very handsome. Hurgens even wondered if she had always been attracted to good-looking men like him. The ceremony went on smoothly, and eventually it was time for the kiss. Hurgens got ready despite being extremely nervous, but Sean took her by surprise because instead of a light kiss, he decided to go for a French kiss, and a deep and long one at that. The guests, and even the priest, started to feeling a little uncomfortable because their kiss just didn't finish. Finally, Sean let her go, and everybody started to congratulate the new couple. Sean was smiling like a little kid who had just done a mischief, while Hurgens was blushing really hard, trying to catch her breath. She then gave him a reproachful look, but he just smiled, and she blushed hard again. Hurgens then thought that their marriage was an arranged one, nothing more, nothing less, so she couldn't understand what was with that kiss he just gave her. Hurgens was taking a bath, and she still couldn't believe it was already their first night as a married couple. When she finished, a couple of maids called her Countess, and that reminded her she was married to a count. She then thought she had heard that originally the woman had to prove her purity in an arranged marriage. The couple even have their parents over to watch their children during their first night together. Fortunately, she didn't have to worry about that, since the thought of that alone was scary to her. She then entered the bedroom and was surprised because the entire decor had been redone. In fact, she thought they had overdone it with the rose petals they had placed over the bed. Hurgens then removed all of them and focused her attention in the food and wine that was placed in a table nearby. However, when she was drinking the wine, Sean entered the bedroom, surprising her to the point he was choking on the wine. Hurgens then regained her composure and told him she couldn't help it because she hadn't eaten anything the entire day. Sean didn't say anything and just got seated, so an awkward silence filled the place. Luckily, our protagonist decided to get things rolling by pouring him a cup of wine, and while he was drinking it, the woman couldn't help but started feeling nervous again, while thinking they would be spending their first night together. Suddenly, Sean asked Hurgens if she was hiding anything from him. He then added that they were already married, so they shouldn't have any secrets between them. Hurgens, however, didn't fall for that trick and asked him back if he had any secrets. The knight then decided to spice things up and took her to the floor. Afterwards, Sean looked at her chest and told her she was a woman after all, which pissed her off to the point she tried to escape from him. However, Sean grabbed one of her legs, and after placing her face down on the floor and getting on top of her, he reminded her that that was their first night. That made Hurgens really nervous because she thought they were about to do the deed in that moment and place. Sean then asked her if that was her first time, and that made her react by jumping towards the bed and covering with the sheets afterwards. Sean smiled after seeing her reaction and slowly went to the bed. Once he was really close to her, he said that they would be up all night if she kept that up. He then removed the sheets and told her that when he looked at her, he couldn't help but feel angry. She was surprised by that and thought that she was feeling guilty for several reasons, but was afraid to ask him why he felt like that. Sean then added that he still had some uncertainties inside him and was not sure how he felt, but he felt like everything was going to work out if he was with her. The knight then asked her how she felt. Hurgens thought that when she looked into his purple eyes, she felt like she was being pulled in, but in the end, didn't say anything. So Sean told her that if she didn't want to answer, that was fine with him. In the end, he couldn't do anything about the fact that that was her first time, but he would make sure she felt good. They then started making love, and they both were truly enjoying the act. Unfortunately, Sean noticed that Hurgens' body was covered by several scars, and he asked her how she had gotten them. Sean started licking Hurgens' hands while saying the calluses she had in them were as if she had held a sword before. And at that point, she couldn't stand it anymore because she was both aroused and nervous, so she told him it was enough. However, he didn't stop, and she thought she couldn't help herself because it was so overwhelming. She then hugged him tightly while moaning, to the point her nails left some marks on his back. In the end, Hurgens had to admit the whole act felt good. The knight kept going, but he never stopped asking her for directions and making sure she felt good. Sean then started dreaming, and we heard somebody saying, Lady Cheiroxus passed away while she was giving birth to that child, and after that, Sir Cheiroxus died in an accident, so people started believing Sean was a demon who had killed his parents. We then saw the knight while he was still a kid, talking to a woman and a man. The woman said she got that they were his closest kin, but she wondered, what if they died too? The man, on the other hand, told the kid that from that moment on he was a servant. It was obvious that his adoptive parents treated him badly, to the point he wondered why he was even alive to live that hellish life. One day, the daughter of the couple tried to seduce him and invited him to her room, threatening him to not giving him any food the next day if he didn't do as he was told. Unfortunately, her father caught them in the act, and the woman quickly blamed Sean, saying he had seduced her. In the end, people kept taking advantage of him, and he ended up selling himself to women for shelter and food, which little by little caused him a trauma. That was why when the war started, he didn't hesitate and went to the battlefield, because he would rather fight than kept living like that. Sadly, a traitor tried to kill him, and while his consciousness was fading away, his hatred didn't stop growing. However, in the end, he didn't die because a guy saved him, and that was the first time he was treated so kindly without something in return. Of course, that astonished him, so he made sure to make it through that in hopes that they met again, so that he could get an answer from him. Sometime later, a subordinate reported Sean that something was not right, and Herg was leaving. He then told him that they had saw him gathering his things and saying farewell to the members of Eliezer. Sean then ran as fast as he could, while thinking he didn't want Herg to leave. He was even willing to give him money or a title. Sean finally caught up with him, and he suddenly woke up from his dream. He then stared at Hergenes, thinking she was beautiful, but that there was something unusual about her, since she was definitely not like the other ladies. We then found out that he didn't plan on spending the night with her, but seeing her having a little party for herself made him change his mind. He then thought she was full of mystery, and that she might be even Herge for all he knew. But he then said that even if she wasn't, that night was truly an unforgettable one, and that being with her helped him get his mind off of Herge. Sometime later, Hergenes woke up and stared at Sean, while thinking he had a unique charm to him. The knight then woke up and caught her staring at him. Hergenes asked him if he had slept well, and when he said good morning to her, she couldn't help but blush hard, while asking herself why was her heart beating that strong and fast. He then took advantage of her distraction to give her a good morning kiss that made her blush even more. She was aware that they were a couple and that they had even spent the night together, but she still didn't zero-T understand why he was being that friendly all of a sudden. She then tried to get up, but she started feeling pain, and Sean asked her if she was okay. Hergenes then said it was hurting, thanks to a certain somebody. Sean then said he was sure that was only part of the story, and our protagonist admitted it, but added that it had not been that pleasant either. He then told her next time he would make sure it felt really good, and the woman asked him to stop talking and to help her get up. He helped her and asked her to get some rest that day, since they had a lot to do starting the next day. Finally, before leaving, he reminded her that the servants and maids were from the Imperial Palace, so she shouldn't trust them too much. Hergenes then recalled that the Imperial Palace had indeed sent servants and maids to House Targail, making the existing ones to be assigned to do trivial jobs and menial chores. Of course, she knew they hadn't just sent them those new maids out of pure courtesy. That was why she told him that it looked like His Highness didn't trust him completely. However, Sean didn't take it to heart and said that it was due to the way he was raised. Afterwards, he got close to her, and after patting her, he asked her to make their marriage work together. Our protagonist tried to act as if she was feeling uncomfortable with the patting, but after he left, she kept looking at the door while touching her head and blushing. Afterwards, she received a congratulatory gift from His Highness, which was a necklace paired with 2 earrings, and the 3 pieces screamed luxury, especially because of the big diamonds they had. Hergenes started to feel super pressured after seeing it, but tried to remain calm and said she should send him her gratitude. Unfortunately, she overacted a little, and the maids got the impression the lady was not impressed with those big diamonds. However, the maids quickly regained their composure and told Hergenes that now that she was the Countess of House Targail, she had to attend social gatherings from that moment onward. That brought back some memories to our protagonist, who recalled that she had already made her debut in high society. However, her family was already in ruins at that time, so nobody took interest in her. Not to mention that, according to her memories, the men of high society always talked about women. Stories of harassment and their escapades were just something for them to brag about, and it was common for nobles to have a lover or two, even if they were married. So as someone with the memories of their past life in modern society, she just couldn't relate. Nevertheless, she had to accept that from that moment onwards, she would be carrying a fan and would head to parties instead of carrying a sword and head to war. Somewhere else, some butler reported to a noble that the wedding at the Targail Countship had ended, and the noble said that that insignificant fool had ended up becoming a Targale. Afterwards, he ordered the butler to send the prepared gifts, while making some disapproving sounds, since the noble was visibly angry after seeing some dirt on the balcony railing. The butler noticed the gesture and what had caused it, and immediately went to clean the railing, while the noble thought that noble, perfect, and beautiful were not the words that best describe Sean Kyroxis. Back with her Genans, she was in her study writing something, when she suddenly stopped to massage her shoulders, thinking that she was glad Sean and her at least worked well together. She then went to the balcony and stretched while thinking he seemed like the type to do whatever he wanted, yet he always respected her opinion and kept her up to date on things. In the end, our protagonist simply threw herself onto the bed, wondering if he was returning that day or not. She then recalled that after their first night together, Sean had been kept busy at the Imperial Palace, so she hadn't been able to see him. Although he had said to her that he would be coming back that day, she then thought that a part of her wished he didn't return, while another part of her wished he would. Hergines then wondered what was that uncertainty that she was feeling, because she believed she was starting to miss him. Nevertheless, that realization upset her, and she immediately denied it, saying that she didn't miss him at all while jumping and sitting on the edge of the bed. She then told herself to stop having weird thoughts and started searching for something under the bed. A short time later, he grabbed her two babies, her rapier and her main gauche, and decided to have some fun with them, since she thought Sean wouldn't be heading back home that night. However, almost immediately she heard something and got on guard while a lot of assassins appeared in the room from above. The intruder started to check the whole room, and one of the subordinates told the boss that the lady was Sean's wife. That startled the other, because he thought Sean would have returned from the palace by that time. In the meantime, Hergines was thinking what was the best course of action, because she was sure that taking them out was not hard, but cleaning up the mess afterwards would be a real challenge, especially if she considered she couldn't have their corpses lying on the bed. An awkward silence filled the room, and soon after, the assassins decided to attack. However, Hergines, instead of attacking, told them that she was in a bit of a pinch at that moment, so she was willing to let them go. She even said that if they left without making a noise, she wouldn't even ask who had sent them. Unfortunately, the assassins didn't take her seriously and continued their attack, forcing her to beat the crap out of them. Her power was so overwhelming that she didn't have to unsheath her weapons to defeat them. Of course, that meant they could keep fighting, so Hergines decided to change her approach to the whole situation, since she didn't have time for any of that. Our protagonist then challenged them, because she was planning to take on all of them. Kalia was the most infamous group of assassins in Valois, and that night their target was Sean Kyroxis, the war hero. They knew that was a really daunting task for their guild, but there were two reasons why they had accepted. First off, a blank check with no limit was put up as a reward. Second, they were honestly curious about Kyroxis, the man people called a demon. However, one of the assassins at that moment was thinking that what was happening was not what they had expected. He then saw one of his injured partners and thought he should have a broken bone, but then after looking back to the lady in front of him, he thought that couldn't be possible. She seemed so delicate, and she hadn't even unsheathed her sword yet, and above all, she wanted all of them to attack her at the same time. However, he was a smart guy, and he quickly realized she was not an ordinary countess. The assassins then attacked her at the same time, but were immediately defeated by one special technique. Afterward, Hergines pointed her sheathed sword against the neck of the remaining assassin, the one who was analyzing her, and asked him if they were from Kalia, surprising him since he couldn't believe she had already identified them. Hergines noticed his reaction and asked why he looked so surprised. After all, only Kalia was capable of doing something like that in all of Valois. She then warned him, saying that if they told anyone what they had just seen, the consequences would be severe. The assassin quickly nodded while thinking everything was over, because he was sure she was going to torture them to find out who was behind all that. In fact, he was even wondering if the best course of action was killing themselves while they still could. However, she ordered him to take his men and leave, which startled the assassin, although after having a second thought, she decided to simply throw them through the window, saying the fall wouldn't kill them because there was grass below. Sometime later, Sean arrived and was surprised after seeing her awake and closing the window while wobbling. Hergines then noticed him, and afterward she greeted him while walking toward him and saying she was feeling a bit dizzy. The Count also walked toward her, and when they got very close, he leaned in and told her he had left her alone for too long. That startled her, but she quickly replied that he shouldn't have to hurry while thinking she could have had that place spotless had he arrived a little late. They both kept staring to each other for a while, and then she told him he should have been really busy and asked how many days he had been away. Nevertheless, Sean didn't immediately reply, and that made her a little bit nervous, since she didn't know what he wanted. Finally, after a while, Sean asked her if she had been waiting for him. That surprised her, but she quickly regained her composure and replied she had been waiting for him, since she had so much to discuss with him about the matters related to their countship. That answer made Sean to feel a little bit glum, and Hergenius noticed that which made her think she had perhaps given him the wrong answer, but she wasn't sure. At that moment, a flashback started, and we jumped back to the palace some days before that night. At that time, the noble who had had issues with some dirt on a balcony railing was congratulating Sean. The Count then bowed and said it had been all thanks to him, to which the blonde noble replied he had sent a small gift to congratulate him on his wedding. He then added they had heard his wife had been a peddler while she was working overseas, so he hoped Shed would have liked the gift. Of course, hearing him calling his wife a peddler upset Sean, who immediately asked what he meant by that. He even leaned in and challenged the noble to repeat those words, because it sounded like he was insulting his wife. He then said he certainly hoped that wasn't what he was trying to do. That startled the noble, but almost immediately Sean returned to his harmless self and said he was sorry for not being familiar with etiquette amongst nobles. After all, had been wielding swords in battle that whole time, and for that reason he was sure the other would understand. Afterward, he excused himself and left. Sean then started thinking he was very much aware the nobles looked down on merchants, and that he just couldn't stand to see his smug face as he insulted Hergenius. In fact, had that been a battlefield, he would have gladly killed him. Sometime later, he was with the Crown Prince, and Sean asked him when he could go back home, which surprised the other. Raymond then told him that that was a first, and he even added that perhaps the next thing would be pigs flying over the border. Afterward, they kept working as scheduled. However, Sean kept reflecting about how it bothered him that the noble had brought up Hercules like that. He then started wondering if she would like the tea he was drinking at that time. However, he quickly realized she was drinking wine the night of their wedding, so he concluded she would probably prefer that over tea. Unfortunately, his thoughts were interrupted when the prince told him he wanted him to take care of Elizur for him. Sean then asked the prince what he had meant, since his wording had been ambiguous. Raymond then gave him a black smile and bluntly asked him to get rid of Elizur for him. The prince even went as far as to clarify that, on the record, none of that would have to do with him. However, Sean's reaction was not what Raymond had expected, because the count rose and told him with an angry face that even animals knew when to be grateful. That attitude gave the prince the chills to the point he even clenched the armrests of his chair. Raymond then said it was okay to let them be, and afterward, Sean deeply bowed to him while asking him to forgive his rudeness. The count then thought it was time to explain some things and said that the captain of Elizur had saved his life. That revelation shocked the prince, and Sean then added that if it was about their payment, then he would take care of it. However, Raymond replied it was something else, and the count asked him if he wanted them to pledge their loyalty to the empire. That surprised the prince, who said he had tried to convince them, but he hadn't been able to do it. In fact, no one had. Sean then smiled confidently and assured Raymond he would convince the mercenaries of Elizur into becoming Knights of House Targel. Back to the present, we see the point of view of Sean when he arrived with Hergenius, and how when he told her he had left her alone for too long, he was wondering what would happen if she told him how lonely she had been that whole time. However, the weirdest part was that despite the fact the Count still had nightmares, where those dreadful women who had abused him demanded him to comfort them for feeling lonely, he was actually looking forward to hear those same words if they were coming from his wife. He made an effort to remain calmed and asked her to have a little chat. Hergenius accepted, and they both went to a terrace and started talking while having some food and wine. Nevertheless, Sean didn't avoid the hot topic and asked her if she hated him. Hergenius was clueless, thinking that it had been random, and the Count was thinking she surely hated him. After all, he had given her a contract the day they first met. Not to mention, he had taken over that place as the Count of her family. In the end, he had been nothing but horrible to her. While having those thoughts, Sean nervously gulped his wine, but his wife didn't appear to be affected by the question because she just kept sipping her wine, looking calm. Finally, after some time, she decided to reply, asking why she should hate him, to which the Count replied, there could be many reasons, so he wanted her to tell him anything. Hergenius took that as her cue and told him there were indeed tons of reasons. First of all, he was a total scoundrel, he talked like one, he was very self-centered, and he acted cold towards others. Those affirmations made Sean scoffed, and his wife took that as a confirmation of her words. He then asked her if there was anything else, and she asked back if he enjoyed being humiliated, to which the Count replied it was music to his ears. Hergenius then told him he was very strange, and Sean finally started laughing. Afterward, he told her he thought she resented him, and she asked why, to which he replied because of the title. Hergenius then told him Estienne didn't want to become the Count, since he was currently unable to take over, and she obviously couldn't become the Count either. In the end, she said she really didn't care as long as he abode by the contract, while thinking that although it was an arranged marriage, Sean had the power and wealth to help Estienne, and a part of her had indeed wanted to see him again after the war. He replied, while caressing her hair, that he was a bit worried that she regretted all of that. Afterward, he leaned in, and Hergena started getting nervous, wondering what had gotten into him all of a sudden since it was like he was clinging on to her. She then said it was indeed an arranged marriage after all, but not a bad one. Her jeans then rose but tripped, and Sean was fast enough to grab her, while she thought she might be drunk. However, to her surprise, the Count took that opportunity to kiss her. Well, he tried to kiss her, but Hergenies put her hand on his mouth to prevent their lips to make contact, and then reminded him that they had agreed to do that once a month. Afterward, she turned around and left, leaving him bewildered. The next day, Hergenies was in a carriage while remembering the things that happened the night before, wondering why he had said those words and why he had tried to kiss her. She then grabbed her head while blushing hard and wondering if he had started to like her. However, she had a schedule to follow, so she shook her head to snap out of that. That day, she had to assist to a tea party hosted by House Epernon, and the lady that had invited her was Cecilia Epernon, who was considered the trendsetter of high society. Sometime later, she arrived at her destination, and while walking inside the place, she was recalling that only single young ladies and those who had married at a young age had been invited, which made her believe that perhaps she would make a friend or two that day. After a while, a beautiful lady stood in front of her and introduced herself as Cecilia of House Epernon, to which Hergenies replied in kind. Unfortunately, after both ladies stared to each other for a little while, our protagonist realized the whole thing was a trap. In fact, she quickly confirmed that thought because she was assigned to the losers' table. Hergenies was really upset with all that because she thought they were equals, yet Cecilia had dared to ignore her like that. However, after a while, she started to think perhaps it was not all that bad, although it was still annoying. Besides, she also began to wonder what was her deal. On the other hand, the other ladies were very happy admiring some fancy tea set that had been brought in from Ryo Kingdom, and Hergenies just couldn't understand why they were so joyful over some pieces of ceramics. Afterward, the other lady that shared the table with our protagonist complimented the Epernon countship, since even the way the napkins were folded was so elegant. Hergenies this time was not annoyed by the comment, since she herself believed the napkins looked cute that way. Nevertheless, she started complaining again, because they had been served green tea, and she preferred black tea. In that precise moment, one of the ladies that were sat with Cecilia started complaining about the tea, saying it was too bitter, and other asked if it was supposed to be that way. Cecilia didn't know what to say and just remained silent, and the other ladies kept talking about that, saying that perhaps that was how they liked it in Ryo Kingdom. However, Hergenies took that chance to stand out, explaining that green tea was supposed to be brewed with cooled water, because hot water made it taste bitter. Everybody became silent after that remark, and Cecilia kept wondering how she knew about green tea since she thought their countship had been the first one to bring it into Valois. All the ladies kept staring at each other without knowing what to do, and then the one sitting beside Hergenies asked Cecilia not to be worried, adding that it should be the tea leaves. However, other lady put our protagonist's theory into practice and confirmed that it tasted good brewed with cooled water. Of course, that impressed the other ladies but upset Cecilia, who was trembling with rage. Hergenies noticed her reaction and realized that despite being unintentionally, she had indeed hurt the other's pride. She then thought that she knew that information since Ryo Kingdom was similar to ancient Korea. Hergenies also thought that the host had probably spent a lot of money preparing those tea sets and she had ruined it. Nevertheless, Cecilia regained her composure and said that thanks to our protagonist, they were able to start enjoying the tea, and afterward, she invited Hergenies to join her. Our protagonist didn't want to sit next to her, but couldn't think of any excuses to avoid that situation, so she ended up complying. Once she sat, Cecilia introduced her to the other ladies, saying she was Countess Targale, and the others reacting immediately, realizing she was Sean's wife. One of them even said it out loud and then apologized, explaining that was an old habit of her. The ladies then started discussing about how popular in high society Count Targale was, and how so many ladies had cried over him. Cecilia then said that even she used to admire him, and that he was someone that all the ladies still admire, because he was a true hero who tended everyone's needs. Of course, those words made Hergenies angry to the point of clenching her own dress, and afterward she asked if he was still seeing other ladies those days. Nevertheless, her face was screaming wrath, and the other ladies got frightened by it, so none of them was able to reply. Hergenies then called Cecilia, who was also scared, and demanded her to answer her question. Cecilia just couldn't believe what was happening. Hergenies should have been the one feeling intimidated by them, but rather it was the exact opposite at that moment. Our protagonist demanded the other for an answer for a third time, and Cecilia finally replied that it was not it, adding there hadn't been any of that. Hergines then thanked her for her honesty, and afterward Rose explaining she was feeling a bit under the weather, so she should head back. Back in her state, Hergines was releasing all her fury against a salad, to the point one of the maids asked her if she would like a different one, to which our protagonist replied it was fine, since she didn't have an appetite while thinking that all of it had infuriated her. She then wondered if she should just leave it all behind and go back to Eliezer, considering that Estienne was all grown up, plus he was smart enough to make a living on his own after he graduated. She even considered the possibility of the Valois Empire chasing after her, and she resolved that if that was the case, she could just cross the border. However, that didn't make her feel any better. In fact, her rage had just gotten stronger while wondering what Sean had done in the past for her to hear all of that. She then thought that even if men in the Empire usually had more than one lover, that was only applicable to other men, not her man. Hergines then raised her fist, and Sean arrived in that very moment, finding her in that position. Hergines then turned around, and the Count could see how angry she was, which made him wary of her. Our protagonist then walked towards him, and when they were very close, she said she had gone to a tea party held by House Epernon that day. Sean realized things had gone south after hearing that name, and said he had something to tell her, which made her order the maids to leave them. Once they were alone, he said that even if he didn't know what had happened in that tea party, it has been all his fault. Hergines then sighed and asked if that was all he had to say. Sean apologized, and that was just too much for her. Hergines then snapped at him, saying that if he wanted to make that right, he should let her have her time of debauchery. Of course that upset him, and she got even more upset by seeing him getting angry. Sean then made an effort to cool down, but Hergines asked him what was there to even care about between them. After all, they were only married under a contract, so she told him they should also stay out of each other's personal lives as well. Afterward, she turned around and tried to leave, but he grabbed her hand and asked her to stay. She demanded him to let her go, but he hugged her instead and begged her to stay. In the end, she agreed to stay, but under the condition that he should tell her what he had done wrong. Sean then said that what he was about to say he had never told to anyone before. He even added he didn't know where to begin. Those words made Hergines wonder if he would leave her, just like he had done with all the other ladies, if she ended up falling for him and became madly in love. She then tried to turn around, but he grabbed her shoulders, and then he went on his knees to beg her. That gesture almost made her laugh, but she could control her urges, and after seeing his face again, she couldn't believe he was looking so desperate. He then swore with all his heart he hadn't done anything shameful ever since they had gotten married, to which she asked what about before the wedding. That question made him feel uncomfortable, which in turn made her chuckle. He then promised it would never happen again. Afterward, Hergines began to wonder what to do, and after a while she came to a solution and told him they should amend the contract. From that moment onwards, they would only spend the night together when she wanted to, and they were going to use separate rooms for the time being. Of course, that was too much for him, but she said she thought they needed some time apart from each other. That completely devastated him. Sometime later, he was in a balcony thinking that had been a first. Prior to that, he had never lost when it came to women. In fact, he still didn't know why he had tried to stop her from leaving, and started wondering if that had been due to him thinking she might be her go. However, his thoughts were interrupted because one of his men appeared, and the Count asked him if he had found them. The other replied it was hard to sneak in there, and then asked when they were joining House Targael. He even said they were getting tired of waiting, and added that Marlowe was especially fed up with playing head of the corps, and wanted to go back to being the butler. Sean then asked Reeve, the newcomer, why the long setup, and urged him to get to the point. The other then replied they had found Elazar were near Manhwa Square. He then added they had acquired information that they were staying there without much action, and asked when he was going to see them. Sean then started thinking that they might be war heroes, but they were still mercenaries, so even if they made them part of Targael's army, the nobles would oppose them because of their status. In fact, had Raymond not considered him a partner, he would have had to commit treason to protect them. Finally, the Count replied he was planning to meet them as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in a fancy hall, the assassins were having a meeting, and one of them asked if it was too late to turn down the request, to which other replied they would all die if they did that, considering the identity of the person that had requested the job. Others said they didn't know they would get beat up by the Countess, which triggered some of them who had already become her fans into saying she had been so kind to them. However, their leader told them that she had been very kind indeed in letting them go like that, but he was sure that if they were to go there again, that very same Countess would kill them all. Of course, that frightened everybody, but their leader then came up with a solution and showed them the blank check. His idea was simple but ingenious. They would just take that request and bring it to someone else. He even had in mind the perfect candidate for the job, Eliezer. Sometime later, at Eliezer's headquarters, the mercenary group was visited by a guy who seemed to be nervous about something. The mercenaries asked what was he doing there, and the other replied he wanted to offer them a job. Tarkun was amused by that statement and asked the guy if the assassins were hiring mercenaries those days to do their jobs. However, Rafin took the lead and introduced himself, and the other replied in kind, saying he was Epin, the guildmaster of Kalia. That surprised Rafin since he was not expected the other to be from that guild. Epin then confessed to be ashamed and revealed they had recently failed to complete a request. That surprised the trio even more, and Rafin asked who was their target. Epin then gathered his courage and gave them the blank check, saying the fate of Kalia was on the line and begged them to take the job. Ivana quickly took the check before Rafin even reacted, and the woman confirmed it was not fake. Afterward, both she and Tarkun were planning to send Rafin to do the job, while deciding what to do with the money. Nevertheless, Rafin didn't lose his focus and asked again who was the target. The assassin then revealed it was Sean Kyroxis Targale, and added that when they had arrived, only the Countess was there. Obviously, the trio went berserk after hearing that, and they even tried to kill Epin, but they quickly cooled down and decided to find out what was happening first. As for the assassin, he started to connect the dots by analyzing the swordsmanship of both the Countess and Herg, and realized they were the same person. Of course, the trio noticed this and started to seriously considering the idea of killing him, but in that precise moment someone else arrived and Ivana told Epin to hide. A few moments later, Sean entered the place and the trio greeted him while the assassin was thinking he had a sword laced with poison with him. So that was a perfect chance to kill him, since he was focused on Eliezer and it seemed he was unarmed. However, only his mere presence had frozen Epin, who just couldn't move. In the meantime, Ivana invited Shan to take a seat and she even offered him a drink, but Rafin quickly grabbed it because it was poisoned. That bothered the woman, but Sean didn't seem to care since he wasn't planning to drink it. Rafin then asked the Count what was the purpose of his visit, and Sean got straight to the point, asking them how they felt about joining the Order of Targale. Okay, let's rewind things a little bit and change the point of view to Sean. The Count was on a carriage along with Reeve, who was telling his that the reason the Anexian followers were roaming about was that they were looking for a demon to end the world during the millennium. Of course, Reeve thought the whole thing was ridiculous, but Sean didn't even care about it. In fact, after seeing how uninterested the Count was, Reeve couldn't help but ask him if he had fought with his wife, which put Sean out of his reverie and confirmed Reeve's guess. The Count then asked if he knew what the ladies like. That surprised Reeve because he recalled Sean had never gifted anything to the ladies who chased after him before. In fact, he wouldn't even give them a glance, so he thought that was how would treat Hergenus Targale as well. Reeve suggested him to get on her family's good side. He then added he had been told that Countess Targale had a younger brother. Afterward, Reeve said that Estienne's university hosted 2 forums every year, and during that time, people were allowed to enter the campus. Sean then decided to go there, since the next forum was going to start soon. Sometime later, the coachman stopped the carriage and informed the Count that they couldn't take the carriage beyond that point, because the road was too narrow. Sean then got out of the vehicle and told the others he was going to go alone. After some time, he finally arrived to his destination, but before knocking the door, he wondered what would happen if Herg happened to be inside, and what would happen if Herg was not Hergenese. Nevertheless, in the end he realized that Herg would still be Herga, and Hergenese would still be Hergenese, and that they were both special to him in their own separate ways. However, he couldn't help but feel relieved when he opened the door and confirmed Herg was not there. Back to the present, Ivana got mad after hearing Sean's question, but Rafin knew there was more to it, so he asked the Count what was the reason behind that offer, to which Sean replied, the Crown Prince wanted to get rid of Eliezer. The trio got shocked after hearing that, but Rafin quickly recovered and said they were going to give up the rest of the payment. He also thanked Sean for his offer but told him they couldn't join his army. Sean got upset and asked them how were Hergenese and Herg related. The Count even added that if they answered that question he wouldn't bother them any longer, but if they didn't, then. Nevertheless, Rafin interrupted him and asked if he was threatening them. Sean replied he wasn't threatening them, but added that Eliezer already had the imperial family's undivided attention, so it would hard to cross the borders. He also told them that he wouldn't keep them all as his knights forever, but just long enough to lay low for the time being. In the end, he remarked the choice was theirs. The Count then rose and walked to the door while saying he would be waiting for their reply. However, before reaching to the door, he stopped and told them he didn't know they had recruited a new member, which gave Epin the shivers. Luckily for him, Sean simply left after that. Afterward, an annoyed Rafin admitted they didn't have a choice because considering the circumstances, they were stuck with House Targale, whether they like it or not, and the others agreed. However, Epin was not mad at all, since he had seen a way out for his guild, and asked the trio to let Kalia join the Order of Targail too. The trio got disgusted after hearing the idea, but in the end, Tarkun asked the assassin how he planned to make that work, to which the other replied by pretending to be part of Elizir. He even was willing to make all the members of Kalia to be servants of Elizir if they agreed to his idea. Back with our protagonist, she was receiving some compliments from her maids because she looked beautiful, which made her feel well. Herdens was indeed trying to look good, since that day Sean's followers would enlist in the Order of Targail, and thanks to that, the Order of Targail would be restored, just like the old days when it was called the Black Ravens of Targail. She then recalled that the Black Ravens of Targail used to be feared on the battleground, but when an heir to lead the Ravens was not born, the ravens all flew away, and the words "Black Ravens don't cry" could no longer be heard after that. Sean then arrived to the room and asked her if she was ready, pulling her out of her reverie. The Count then added there were some people he would like her to meet before going to see the Order, which made her wonder if he had gone all the way there just for that. Sometime later, they arrived to another room, and Sean introduced her to Reeve Cullens, who was the captain of the Order, and Marlo Sepier, who was their butler. Sean then ordered the two men to bring some papers, and told Herginis they had organized the financial status of House Targail. Our protagonist then took a look to the documents and asked if all of that was his, to which Sean replied, asking her if she had heard of the Machance Corps. The Count then revealed he owned it, which startled Herginis because that was the biggest defense corps in the Empire. In fact, the butler tried to stop Sean, but he remarked she was also the head of House Targail, so there should be no secrets. The butler then said that on paper he was listed as the owner, but in reality, Count de Targail owned it. He also added he used to be a merchant, and Sean had established the corps when they met each other. Herginis asked if they had met during the 100-Year War, and the butler replied that he had saved his life back then. Afterward, Herginis kept looking through the documents while thinking that they had been part of the same war, but Sean was so different than her. Of course, she had to consider she had run away from the battlefield to take care of his family a year before, and that she had even refused the money given to Elizir. Sometime later, the official ceremony began, and Sean told his followers that all of them would stand in the name of House Targail from that moment onwards. However, what surprised Hergins was the amount of people who were enlisting because she didn't know Sean had so many followers. Nevertheless, what shocked our protagonist was noticing that her partners from Elizir were standing among the crowd. The next day, Herginis woke up thinking that she had wanted to grab her partners by their collars and ask them what they were doing there, but she couldn't because of her position. Luckily, her friends found a way to get to her room and started to knock one of the windows to draw her attention. Our protagonist heard the call and let them enter, but they were now 4 people instead of 3. In fact, the 4th one quickly introduced himself as Epin of Kalea, thinking that she might not remember him. However, she indeed remembered him, but wasn't prepared to hear that he had gone to House Targail out of admiration of her swordsmanship. Rafine then took the lead and informed her that Sean was looking for them, because apparently the palace wanted to eliminate Elizir. The Count had asked them to join the Order of Targail so that they could be protected. Of course, that made her mad, because she saw that as the palace wanting to stab them in the back. But then she thought she could have lost her friends had that not happened. Hergins told them she was glad they were all there, while thinking that they would all be on the run if Sean wouldn't have helped them. However, Rafine quickly made her notice that the Count might know her secret, so she might need to be more careful. Our protagonist then thought that Karaxis had been suspicious from the start, and she even went as far as to consider the possibility of him knowing that Herga was her from the very beginning. Rafine then told her that Epin had gone to their hideout right before Sean arrived, and Ivana then offered herself to kill him if her captain agreed to it. The red-haired woman also added that he knew her secret, so they couldn't let him run around telling people. However, Tarkun said that Hergenis had let him live, so he preferred to have him as their personal lackey instead. Fortunately for the assassin, our protagonist ended up agreeing with Tarkun's idea. Afterward, Epin told her he and Kalia would serve her for life, and Ivana started saying how great was her captain. But then Tarkun noticed someone was about to arrive, and the quartet immediately left. A few moments later, someone knocked on the door, and Herginis was surprised to see it was Sean. He apologized for bothering her that late, to which she replied it was all right. The two of them then got seated, but no one talked, and Herginis thought that was awkward, but tried to justify it as a consequence of using separate rooms in recent days. Our protagonist then thought he had gone to talk about work, but he gave her a surprise, because his reason of going to her room was to invite her to go to Breton with him. He then explained that the forum at Axe University was starting soon, and she immediately realized his intention and couldn't help but be deeply moved. Our protagonist thanked him while holding her urge to cry, and he replied he had just wanted to do something she would like. Sometime later in the palace, the Crown Prince was telling Duke Seraph the one who had insulted her gangs in front of Sean, that he had liked his suggestions that day. The noble then took the chance to tell Raymond that in recent days, Elizur had joined the Order of Targael, to which the other replied he was aware of it. However, the Duke was not satisfied with that answer, and said he was worried they might do something else, hinting that perhaps Count Targael could overthrow the palace. The prince thanked the other for his concern, but added that he already had eyes on House Targael, so he shouldn't have to worry about it. The Duke then left, and once he was outside the prince's view, he couldn't help but show in his face how pissed he was. He couldn't believe the prince thought that he had Sean Kyroxis under control, and realized Raymond would only come to his senses when Sean stabbed him in the back. However, in the end he cooled down, because not matter what happened, it would all work out the way he wanted. Herganes was packing her bags, getting ready for the journey, while remembering the huge piece of information the quartet had given to her the night before. The person behind the request for killing Sean was Duke Enoch Seraph. She just couldn't believe it, since he had helped his husband to become the Count of House Targael. In the end, she decided to stop thinking about that and focus on the matter at hand, that was deciding whether to take or not her weapons with her. She then recalled when the Count invited her to the university and thought that had it been Sean before the incident, he would have been cold toward her, or he would have cut her off if she ever asked him about his past or other personal matters. Either that, or he would have completely ignored her. She then wondered if that was common in other arranged marriages, and even considered the idea that he already knew that she was Herg and was just repaying her for saving his life. In the end, she thought that whatever it might be, since he hadn't said anything yet, she was going to keep her mouth shut until the very end. Although she couldn't help but admit he was getting her feeling weird. In that moment, Ivana knocked on the door and Hergines let her in. Once inside, the red-haired woman double-checked the room, and when she made sure the coast was clear, she threw herself over her captain. Afterward, she got up and started complaining about her new uniform, saying it was too tight, to which the other replied she was wrong because she looked great. Ivana then hugged her tightly, saying that was why she was the best. The mercenary then added that all the people in that place were idiots. Of course, Hergines understood the feelings of the other, since for an alchemist, the majority of people would appear as dumb. Ivana then reported that a fight had happened that day and that it had been Sean's men against them. That surprised the Countess, but there was more to report because Tarkun and Kyroxis had also had a one-on-one duel. The mercenary then proceeded to narrate the incidents. Apparently the trio were just hanging out when other guys started complaining about the fact that they were not training, to which Tarkun replied they wouldn't even last a second if they trained with them. Of course, that remark almost immediately led to a duel, and then to another, and so on. The red-haired guy won all of them, but his partners noticed he had gotten rusty since the war. Sometime later, Sean appeared, and while his subordinate was trying to restore the order, Tarkun challenged the Count to a duel. They even decided to use real swords for the fight. Rafin showed his faith on his partner by betting his first pay on Tarkun falling within the first 10 swings. However, Ivana showed she had even more faith in the red-haired man by betting 2 times her first pay on Tarkun falling within 5 swings. Rafin then bet on 3 swings and Ivana bet on 2. Of course, Tarkun couldn't take it anymore at that point and bet his whole pay on his victory. On the other hand, Sean didn't seem to care about the bets and offered Tarkun to go first. The red-haired man didn't reject the offer and use an attack so powerful that it created a huge explosion. However, Sean evaded it with ease and hit his opponent with the hilt of his sword to win the duel with just 1 move. In the end, the Count asked Tarkun and the others from Elizur to take Herg there. Ivana then finished the story saying Sean had said those words before leaving, so the rest was taken care of by Reeve. She then added that only Hergines would be able to stand a chance against Kyroxis in a duel. Unfortunately, their conversation was interrupted by Rosalie, who arrived to inform that Count Targael wanted to see her in his office, in regards to Brieten. Sometime later, Hergines arrived at Sean's office and he immediately told her they had had a slight commotion involving the members of Elizur. Obviously, that caught her by surprise, and she tried to play the fool by saying she had thought he wanted to talk about Brian. The Count didn't buy her acting, and reminded her that they were in that together, which was why he had told her about the Machanskor. He then asked her if she really had nothing to tell him. That made her question herself on what could she tell him at that moment, and almost immediately realized she just couldn't tell him the truth because, just like how he was unsure about her, she was unsure about him. Besides, she didn't want to tell him the truth while he interrogated her like that. Her genies then got closer and leaned in. Before replying, she thought he had already decided on an answer. Sean remained silent for a little while, and then said that it appeared that he had brought up a rather foolish question, and immediately thereafter he took the chance to kiss her. Hergines couldn't avoid the kiss that time, but she moved away quickly, while blushing and covering her lips. Sean then told her that it seemed he would have to find out on his own. On the other hand, she demanded that he just talked about Breton. The Count decided to comply and said he had called her that day in order to finalize the people heading to Breton with them. He then added that her guards would be Elizur and her maid would be Rosalie. Huggins then wanted to confirm if Rosalie would be riding with her, to which he replied that if she was worried about the Crown Prince, they could take her off the list. However, she refused the offer, saying they couldn't attract attention because of such trivial matters. Nevertheless, she made him notice that even if they left together, it didn't mean that they have to arrive together. Sometime later, Sean, Huggins, and the rest had already begun the trip and were in the middle of some forest. In fact, Rosalie was feeling the hardships of traveling, and when the group decided to make a stop for resting, she had to remain inside the carriage, while the others set up a camp. Our protagonist told her to get some rest and informed her she was going out for a walk. When Sean heard that, he offered to accompany his wife, and she accepted. Once they were away from the group, he asked her if everything was okay, and she replied that all she had done had been sitting in the carriage, so everything had been fine. She then asked how he was since he had been riding a horse all day long, to which he replied he did that all the time. After a while, they both arrived to a cliff, and Huggins got very close to its edge to the point that she ended up falling. That shocked Sean, who reacted quickly and tried to grab her. But luckily the cliff was shallow and she was not in danger. In fact, she started scratching one of her cheeks with a finger while asking him if he was going to help her up. He then jumped to get beside her, while saying that it wouldn't be easy for her to get back up the summit with her dress on. That gesture surprised her since she noticed he had gone all the way down there just to help her up from below. In that moment, a flock of birds covered the sky, and Sean said something had begun, to which Huggins replied that hopefully it would end soon. Now we have a flashback where we could see how the couple planned their journey. Fernando Forest, the forest where they were at that time, was a shortcut to Breton, but it was famous for having lots of bandits. So the members of Callio would dress up like bandits and take away Rosalie until they returned. That way they would be safe from the eyes of the palace. Of course, Huggins felt bad for Rosalie, but she wanted to see Estienne without any prying yes. Back to the present, our protagonist told Sean that the kidnapping might take a while, so they could just look around some more since she thought she had heard water nearby. Sometime later they arrived to a brook and just kept walking until night arrived. Unfortunately, in that moment, a group of real bandits appeared and surrounded them. The leader of the group then asked them if they were nobles, and when Sean confirmed they indeed were nobles, the other told him that they wouldn't kill them, but they would have to give them what they got. Huggins immediately hid behind his husband, while she encouraged him to take care of the bandits. Sean glanced at her, and after smiling, he told her he would take care of them, which made her nodding with joy. Sean quickly started to beat the crap out of the bandits, but some of them tried to attack Huggins by treason. However, our protagonist decided to join the fun, and began beating the crap out of them too. Unfortunately, at one point the Count turned to look back at her, and she had to toss the stick she had been using to fight in order to not expose her secret. Sadly, a bandit took that chance to grab her and held a knife to her throat. The man then demanded Sean not to move, otherwise he would kill our protagonist. Of course, that made the Count really mad, to the point he started to release his killing intent, which was noticed by Huggins, who didn't know what to do. Huggins knew she couldn't get out of that situation on her own, while Sean was watching, so she had to wait for his husband to rescue her. Nevertheless, the killing intent of the Count had gotten so intense that it gave the bandit the chills. Luckily, Tarkun arrived at that moment and told the bandits that he was there to spare them all, and then pointed at the summit of a mountain where Ivana and Rafine were ready to take the whole group down with her potions and his arrows. Afterward, Tarkun asked the bandits if they knew who they were going after. When the others looked at the other two people, they realized they were Elizur. Then the bandit who was holding a knife to Huggins' throat realized they were facing Sir Sean. Immediately thereafter, all the bandits kneeled in front of Sean and begged for his forgiveness, saying all of them had fought in the 100-year war, but they had had no way to make a living after the war was over, because low-ranking soldiers like them didn't receive any rewards. Huggins then took the lead and asked them if they promised that they would not live like that if they find a way to make a living, and the other replied they wouldn't. Our protagonist then told them to head to Himov, since it was part of Targail's land and was not far from where they were. She then added it wouldn't be easy, but they wouldn't starve, and offered to write a letter of recommendation for them, so they stopped living as bandits and started living as people of her land. The bandits kowtowed to her after hearing that, saying she was far too kind, and that they would never forget what she had done for them that night. That solved the issue, and everybody returned to the camp. Sean and Huggins were inside their tent, and she apologized for having not discussed that decision with him, saying she would pay for any additional expenses that might occur to which the other replied there was no need for that. In fact, he said that after their work was done, they could stop by him off on the way back to see how they were doing, which made her happy. Our protagonist then told him she had noticed that he hadn't killed any of the bandits earlier, and he replied he didn't, because she wouldn't have liked it. He also added he could have taken them all on his own without having to kill, which made Hergénie's heart to skip a beat. In fact, she tried to keep her heart under control while blushing really hard. Afterward, Sean rose from the bed. They were both sitting on it and left the tent, leaving her alone, which made her feel kind of sad. The next day, they finally arrived to their destination, and Hergénie was impressed by seeing the city, the port, and the castle. Sometime later, some guards asked them their identifications and got startled after confirming they were talking to Sir Sean Kyroxis Targale. They even asked him for an autograph since they were his fans. However, that didn't happen only with Sean. The guards had the very same reaction when they realized Eliezer was also there. In fact, one of them asked for more paper to get more autographs. After all, it was not common to receive the heroes of the 100-year war there. However, it was just a matter of time for someone to ask if Herg was with them, and that ended up happening very soon. In that moment, Rafine, Ivana, and Tarkun smiled, glancing at Hergénie while listening the guards, saying their wish was to see Sir Hergé before they died. Nevertheless, in the end, Rafine told them that their captain was undergoing extensive training in secret at that time, because he was planning to become the ultimate swordsman. Of course, that made the crowd cheer enthusiastically, while Ivana and Tarkun couldn't help but laugh while looking at Hergénie, who just couldn't believe what the other had said. By the way, Sean noticed all of that and gave Hergénie a knowing smile, which she didn't like because she felt she had been caught red-handed. In fact, she used her hat to cover her face in order to prevent him to see how hard she was blushing, while thinking she should be more careful. At dusk, Sean went to Hergénie's room to ask her if she wanted to go sightseeing, since they were in Breeden, to which she agreed, but on the condition that they went wherever she wanted to go. Sometime later, they were walking through the market while she was smiling with joy and thinking that she should take Sean to a pretty pink dessert cafe. However, in that moment, something dazed her, and Sean went immediately to her side to protect her, noticing that in front of her were the followers of Enex. Sean was surprised to see them there, and Hergénie came back to her sense and said it was her first time seeing them. Suddenly, one of them gave the couple a blessing, but our protagonist had a strange reaction to it, which made Sean to take her away as fast as he could. In fact, their guards didn't understand their reaction, since they believed that the blessing of the followers was good luck. Once they were far enough, Sean stopped and asked her if she was okay. Hergénie nodded, but in reality, she was annoyed trying to figure out what was wrong with her because as soon as she saw them, she spaced out and was confused for no reason. In the end, she asked his husband to head back without knowing she had caused a strong impression on the followers. In fact, one of them said that it was the one, other replied that the wait had been worth it, and a third one said they should report to Illwoods immediately because it was already early summer, so they had only about 3 years left. In the holy city of Anexian, Illwoods was the high priest who ruled over Anexian. People said Illwoods was appointed by God, and that was because when Illwoods was about to die, the followers began to spread out all over the empire. Afterward, when they found someone with divine power, that person underwent a series of tests and became the new Illwoods. And they said that the next Illwoods of the upcoming millennium would be the most powerful being to ever exist. The current Illwoods was sat on his throne while listening a new report from the followers at the Breton border. He then asked if it was the one, and the other replied that indeed the one had been found in Breton Kingdom. Illwoods then said he had had a dream, which worried the man who was giving the report. Afterward, the Illwoods confirmed he was running out of time, and after saying that he was worried, he added that since they had found the one, they should also find the other. Illwoods finally said that he was afraid they would have to request help from Rio Kingdom. We suddenly jumped to a little town who had been set on fire, and we could see Hergénie at the roof of a manor, watching how everything burned beneath her while not knowing what was going on. She then asked herself if that was a dream, and in that moment Sean appeared next to her, but he called her Herg, and his eyes seemed to be different. The man then got closer, and before our protagonist could react, he hugged her tightly and kissed her. Sean is seen on top of Hergénie, and after a brief moment, he apologizes, admitting that he cannot endure the situation any longer. With those words, he immediately leaves. Hergénie remains where she is, confused and unable to understand why he is acting so strangely. Outside, Sean walks away while thinking to himself that he must have gone crazy. The scene then shifts to a group of academy students who are bullying Austin. One of the boys deliberately steps on his notebook before striking him and mockingly asks how someone like him could ever hope to lead the Crows of Targale. They continue ridiculing him, reminding him that he has no talent for swordsmanship. After insulting him, They finally leave. Austin quietly begins gathering his scattered notebook and belongings. While he is doing so, another person bends down to help him. When he looks up, he realizes that it is Princess Hale. She comments that the swordsmanship students are incredibly ignorant and then turns to Austin, asking why he never says anything back to them. She already knows that they are the reason he fell from his horse during the fight the other day. Princess Hale thinks that even though this university is located in Britain and those students come from famous British families, they still have no right to treat him in such a disgraceful manner. She calls out to Austin and sincerely offers to help him. Austin looks at her quietly for a moment before expressing his gratitude for her concern. However, he explains that all he wants is to graduate as quietly as possible. Thanks to the sacrifice his sister has made for him, he is able to attend this university, and he does not want to create any more trouble that would make her worry. He reminds himself that although life is exhausting, he must remain cautious, save as much money as he can, graduate quickly, and eventually help support his sister. With those thoughts in mind, he politely apologizes to Princess Hale if his attitude seems disrespectful toward her. His response only makes her angry, and she walks away, saying that she is deeply disappointed in him. Left standing alone, Austin notices that the Academy tournament is approaching soon. As he looks at a picture of himself, he wonders whether the people who once believed in him would also feel disappointed if they saw what he has become. The thought fills him with sadness. The story then cuts to Herjean, who is asking Ivana how the dress looks. Ivana replies that everything looks beautiful on her, and then wonders if Herjean is really that excited about meeting her brother. Herjean happily admits that she is. Hearing that answer makes Ivana jealous, and she unconsciously begins tightening Herjean's braid. Herjean quickly asks her to be more gentle, but Ivana confesses that she cannot help feeling envious because it seems as though Herjean likes Prince Austin more than she likes her. Herjean gently pats Ivana and tells her that there is no reason to compare the two of them. Austin is Austin, and Ivana is Ivana, and she cares for both of them equally. Although Ivana says that she is still not completely satisfied with that answer, she promises that she will make Herjean look her absolute best. As Herjean walks downstairs, she thinks that if Roselle had come along, she probably would not have dressed up this much. Suddenly, she notices that Sean is also standing there. Their eyes meet, and for a brief moment they simply stare at one another, creating an extremely awkward atmosphere. Sean eventually approaches Herjean and tells her that he is thinking about walking to Equus College. Asking what she thinks about the idea, Herjean simply reaches out her hand toward him, silently agreeing to accompany him. While they are walking together, Herjean asks the guide whether she happens to know where Ashton is. Almost immediately, she realizes that it is a rather unreasonable question because there are hundreds of students at the academy. Surprisingly, the guide immediately asks whether she is referring to Austin and suggests that he is probably inside one of the buildings because it is currently laboratory time. Herjean is surprised that the guide seems to know Austin so well and asks about it. The guide explains that everyone at the academy knows him because all of the educational staff admire his remarkable intelligence. Hearing someone praise Austin so sincerely fills Herjean with pride, and she becomes even more eager to see him. However, that pleasant feeling vanishes in an instant when her eyes suddenly widen. She realizes what is happening before her and sees that Austin is once again being bullied. The moment Herjean sees Austin being bullied, she immediately starts running toward him. Before she can reach him, Sean grabs her hand and stops her. Without saying anything further, he steps forward himself and calls out to the group of students, demanding to know what they think they are doing. One of the bullies looks Sean up and down before mockingly commenting that he does not seem like someone who belongs there. Since he knows nothing about that student, he should simply mind his own business. Austin turns his attention towards Sean and wonders who the unfamiliar man is. However, Sean only smiles to himself before asking whether they are calling him an outsider, because, after all, he is about to become the brother-in-law of the young master standing over there. The single word, brother-in-law, is enough to leave the students completely stunned. Sean walks over to Austin and extends his hand toward him, telling him to go to his sister. Austin follows his gaze and notices Herjean standing nearby as she calls out to him. Without hesitation, he walks over and embraces her. Herjean looks toward Sean, and he simply responds with a small nod. She then tells her brother that they should leave now. As Herjean and Austin prepare to go, Sean turns back toward the group of students. The boys begin whispering among themselves, wondering whether he could actually be Sean. One of them immediately dismisses the possibility, saying that it cannot be true because Sean is already engaged to that family. Gathering their courage, the students begin shouting at him, accusing him of daring to impersonate a hero of war. They claim that he has the audacity to look down upon the nobility while pretending to be someone he is not. Sean merely smirks before fixing them with a cold glare. In a firm and intimidating manner, he tells them to get lost. He then asks whether they truly want him to repeat himself a second time. The moment those words leave his mouth, all 3 students panic and immediately run away as fast as they can. After they disappear, Sean calls out to Liv and orders him to keep an eye on those students and investigate exactly what they have been doing. The scene then shifts to Austin's room, where Hergene quietly looks around at the simple surroundings. Austin lowers his head and apologizes. Hergene cannot hide her shock. Through all the letters they exchanged over the years, she had always believed that he was living a comfortable and peaceful life. Realizing the truth now, she feels like a complete fool. She turns toward Austin and asks him what happened to all the money she had sent him. Austin softly replies that he could never bring himself to use it. He knows that she worked extremely hard in a foreign country to earn that money, and he also believed that their family was struggling financially, so he thought it should be saved instead. Before he can finish, Hergene interrupts him. She firmly tells him that things are not like that anymore. Their circumstances have changed, and that is no longer the reality they live in. Austin begins trembling as he hesitantly asks what would happen if she were to get divorced. In that case, he believes she would need that money as emergency savings. Hergene immediately raises her voice and tells him to listen carefully. She declares that he is never allowed to live like this again. This is not something he should do for her sake. She then asks him whether he realizes just how wealthy she has become. She promises that when he returns home during his summer break, she will show him all the documents herself. After that, she asks whether he understands. Austin quietly nods his head. A moment later, Hergene asks him why he allowed himself to be bullied. Austin explains that those students belong to the swordsmanship class. Because he carries the name of the Targiel family, even people who know very little about swordsmanship are aware of the legendary reputation of their family's skill with the blade. They also know that the family has fallen from its former glory, making him an easy target for ridicule. Hearing this, Hergene lets out a quiet sigh. As her eyes wander around the room, she notices a document lying on the table. Picking it up, she realizes that it is related to the Swordsmanship Festival. She asks Austin whether students from the swordsmanship class are required to participate in the festival. Austin explains that he was originally supposed to join. However, after what happened earlier, Sean's actions probably frightened those students away. Even after hearing that, Hergene still cannot calm her anger. Austin softly calls out to her, but she suddenly asks him whether ordinary people are also allowed to participate in the competition. The scene shifts to Hergene as she hands something over to Austin while he tries to reassure her that everything is fine. However, she refuses to accept that answer and firmly insists that he should take it. She also informs him that, beginning the next day, he will be spending some time with Sean instead. Austin becomes confused by this unexpected arrangement and silently wonders about the reason. But Hergene makes it clear that she will speak with Sean herself. She also tells him that while they are out, he should get a new pair of glasses and purchase some new furniture for his room. At the same time, she quietly realizes that if she truly wants to participate in the upcoming swordsmanship tournament, she must first find a way to get both Austin and Sean away from her. Before leaving, she gives Austin another important warning, stressing that he must never mention her nickname in front of Sean under any circumstances. After making sure he understands, she asks whether he is prepared for the swordsmanship tournament that will take place the day after tomorrow and assures him that she will definitely be there to watch. With those thoughts settled, she embraces him warmly. The scene then changes to Hergene sitting alone in her room, thinking about how she absolutely has to attend the swordsmanship tournament. Her companions immediately realize what she is referring to and understand her intentions, urging her to leave everything to them instead. Hergene refuses, believing that only by confronting those people directly can she truly be satisfied. Since the tournament is scheduled for the following day, everyone wonders how she plans to participate. She explains that her family horsemen will be available, but the others question what Sir Sean will be doing during that time. Hergene confidently states that she will simply ask him to spend the day with Austin, and she asks Lapine to assist her with that part of the plan. Although Lapine initially appears ready to object, he notices that the other two have already sided with Hergene. Ivana even asks how she can help, jokingly wondering whether she should coat Hergene's sword with poison. The others begin discussing that if poison is used, it should not be one that kills immediately, but one that leaves the target disabled for life. Ivana then points out that she does not know what the result would be if only one type were used, but combining them might create a truly lethal mixture. Hergene quickly rejects the entire idea, deciding that poison is unnecessary because what they really need is a proper disguise. Eventually, night falls and Hergene and Sean are shown sitting quietly across from one another. Both of them reveal that they have something they wish to discuss the next day, and Hergene encourages Sean to speak first. Sean admits that he wants to spend some time with Austin, which secretly pleases Hergene because that is exactly what she had intended to ask of him. Even so, she becomes curious about his reason, and Sean explains that it concerns something that should remain between men. Accepting that explanation, Hergine suggests that they should use the opportunity to buy Austin a new pair of glasses along with the other necessities for his room. After that, silence falls between them once more, creating an awkward atmosphere. Hergine hesitantly mentions that she will be working around the area the following day, but the quietness only continues. Trying to ease the tension, she thanks Sean sincerely for everything he has done. Her unexpected gratitude catches him completely off guard, causing him to blush while wondering if that expression of thanks is all she intends to offer. Hergine misunderstands his reaction and briefly thinks that he might be asking for money, even wondering how much he wants. Instead, Sean simply gestures toward his lips, making her blush as she realizes his actual meaning. She quickly rises to her feet, embarrassed by the misunderstanding, but Sean reminds her that they are newlyweds and have shared very little affection with one another. Hergine reflects that their situation is far from that of an ordinary married couple, yet she finally agrees to give him only a single kiss. As she leans closer, she notices that Sean does not even close his eyes. The moment she tries to pull away, he gently draws her back and deepens the kiss. Before things can go any further, she lightly strikes him in embarrassment and immediately runs away, leaving him behind while wishing him a hurried goodnight. The story then moves to the day of the swordsmanship tournament, where excitement fills the air as the long-awaited event finally begins. Participants and spectators alike are busy making their final preparations, and the atmosphere around the arena is filled with anticipation. One observer remarks that this year, very few ordinary civilians have entered the competition, making it likely that most of the contestants will be young nobles instead. The thought of facing young lords causes concern because they are expected to be difficult opponents. Meanwhile, Hergine, hidden beneath her disguise, remains completely unfazed. Her true purpose is not glory or recognition, but to defeat those arrogant brats who have angered her. She intends to settle everything as quickly as possible, and then withdraw from the tournament once her objective has been achieved. At last, the competitors step onto the battlefield, where the crowd eagerly watches the brave warriors preparing to fight. On one side stands a determined challenger, while on the other appears Targael horseman Baines, marking the beginning of the long-awaited contest. The mercenary steps onto the field, believing that this encounter must be fate itself, feeling that everything about the match is proceeding perfectly. Hergine, however, pays little attention to his confidence as she quietly grips the sword with only one hand, noticing that it feels somewhat empty compared to what she is accustomed to. At last, the match officially begins, and both fighters charge toward one another. The battle lasts only a brief moment, as Hergine delivers a single swift strike that instantly overwhelms the mercenary and sends him to the ground. Her victory is so decisive that the spectators immediately erupt into cheers, many of them declaring that such an outcome is exactly what they would expect from Targael. Before long, the next challenger enters the arena. He is introduced as one of the elite swordsmen from the university, and, among the chosen students, he is recognized as their greatest ace. Known as a genius among geniuses, he is Chasian of the Pranos family. The moment Hergine sees him, she realizes that she has finally met the person she had been waiting for. Chasian carries an unusual combination of weapons, a rapier and a main gouche, a fighting style that has recently gained popularity. When he notices the faint smirk on Hergine's face, he becomes offended, believing that she is mocking his choice of weapons. Feeling insulted, he boldly challenges her to prove her own abilities instead of laughing at him. As Chasian continues speaking, the people watching the match begin wondering why he keeps rambling instead of fighting. Even the referee grows impatient and orders him to stop talking and simply begin the duel. Once the signal is given, the young swordsman immediately launches a series of attacks against Hergine. She calmly observes that, considering his age, his strength and speed are both impressive. Nevertheless, she effortlessly avoids every strike with graceful movements, and after allowing him to exhaust himself, she defeats him with a single attack of her own. Chasian cannot understand what has happened. In his mind, he had been dominating the battle from the beginning, so he cannot comprehend how the situation turned against him. Confused and frustrated, he remembers how she kept striking against his guard, as though she were merely testing the weapon he held. Refusing to accept defeat, he rushes toward her once more while desperately shouting for her to die. During that final charge, he notices that Hergine has switched the sword to her other hand, making him wonder if she is actually right-handed and had been holding back the entire time. In the next instant, her final strike lands, ending the match completely. Hergine then steps toward him and calmly explains the proper way to use a rapier and a main gauche. She tells him that when an opponent is far away, one should defend with the main gauche while attacking with the rapier, but when the enemy closes the distance, the rapier should become the defensive weapon while the main gauche is used to strike. The young swordsman becomes so intimidated by her explanation and overwhelming skill that he stumbles backward and falls to the ground. Looking down at him, Hergine criticizes the way he uses the rapier and main gauche, dismissing him as nothing more than an inexperienced brat. The scene then shifts away from the tournament and focuses on Austin as he thinks about Sean. Since the marriage between Sean and his sister is purely political, Austin has always believed that Hergine must be living through a difficult married life. However, Sean had helped him the previous day, and Hergine herself had even mentioned that she was going on a date with her husband. Austin has no idea what actually happened between them, but the thoughts remain in his mind as he approaches Sean's room and gently knocks on the door. Sean opens it and immediately greets him by calling him brother-in-law. He then politely asks Austin to address him the same way. The request makes Austin feel slightly awkward, but after a brief hesitation, he finally calls Sean brother-in-law as well. Satisfied, Sean invites him inside before taking one look around the room. After observing the surroundings, he asks Austin whether it would be all right if he simply called him by his name instead. Austin happily agrees, saying that it is perfectly fine. Sean then calmly gives him an unexpected warning, telling him that if there are any valuable belongings in the room, he should move them somewhere safe immediately because he intends to completely remodel the room and even replace the entire interior that very day. Hearing such a sudden declaration leaves Austin utterly shocked. Austin steps forward carrying a box, explaining that these are the letters he wants to keep. After making sure everything is in order, he instructs one of his subordinates to hand the box over to his guards for safekeeping. Shortly afterward, Liv arrives and formally introduces himself as the current captain of the target knights. Sean immediately cuts off the unnecessary formality, dismissing the introduction as pointless before telling Austin to come along with him. Their next stop is a boutique, where a skilled lady tailor begins taking Austin's measurements. Sean carefully outlines what Austin will need, ordering 5 sets of everyday clothing along with 1 ceremonial outfit and 1 set of attire suitable for parties and formal gatherings. He also remarks that if Austin likes the quality, they can always purchase more later. The tailor confidently assures Sean that they will provide only the finest clothes available. Once they leave the boutique, Sean instructs Austin that when the new garments arrive, he should pack away the single outfit he is currently wearing together with all of his old clothes and simply throw them out. Austin cannot help questioning such a waste, wondering why perfectly usable clothes should be discarded. Sean, however, sees no reason to keep them, believing that new clothes will replace everything anyway. Although Austin quietly agrees, he cannot stop thinking that his old belongings are still in good condition. As they continue through the city, Sean keeps purchasing one item after another, eventually deciding that Austin will probably need jewelry as well. Meanwhile, Austin grows increasingly overwhelmed, silently wondering how expensive all of this must be and whether it is truly acceptable for him to accept so much generosity. Eventually, the two of them sit down together for lunch. Out of habit, Austin addresses Sean by his noble title of Count, but Sean immediately corrects him, insisting that he should call him brother-in-law instead. Austin obeys and thanks him, saying that there is really no need for him to take such good care of him. Sean simply leans back and makes it clear that none of this is being done for Austin's sake, but entirely for the sake of his sister. Hearing that, Austin falls into thought. He honestly has no idea how this marriage will eventually turn out. Since the union was arranged for political reasons, he had desperately wanted to graduate as quickly as possible so he could rescue his sister from what he believed would be a miserable future. Yet after seeing Sean's behavior, his expectations have begun to change. During the meal, Sean suddenly starts explaining that if Austin is ever bullied, he should not hesitate to defend himself, whether by using the knife in his hand or, if necessary, even the fork on the table. Austin notices that the knife never comes anywhere close to his neck, yet the mere presence of Sean makes it feel as though the blade has already cut through him. Faced with someone so intimidating, Austin cannot help wondering whether his sister will truly be all right. Sean continues to explain that quietly enduring mistreatment only encourages bullies to continue, so Austin should never hesitate to fight back, even if he has to use whatever is available around him. Austin wonders whether attacking an unarmed opponent would not be cowardly, but Sean clearly believes that the real cowards are those who gather together to torment a single person. An awkward silence settles between them after that, but Sean eventually breaks it by wondering whether Austin knows what Hergine likes. The question completely catches Austin off guard because, in his mind, this marriage is nothing more than a political arrangement. After a moment, Austin admits that he does not even know whether his own brother-in-law truly likes his sister. Sean appears slightly startled by the question, before honestly confessing that, to tell the truth, he does not really know either. The answer shocks Austin even more, leaving him wondering what Sean is actually trying to say. Before he can ask, however, Sean simply reveals that his only wish is to make her happy. Those simple words leave Austin speechless. There is nothing grand or complicated behind them, just a sincere desire for his sister's happiness. As Austin reflects on it, he realizes that what Sean feels might actually be love. Although it will likely take a long time before either of them fully understands or admits those feelings, Austin finds himself genuinely relieved for his sister's future. At the same time, elsewhere, Hergine stands firmly against her opponents, defeating them one after another and proving her own remarkable strength without wavering. Hergine burns with anger as she thinks about those who dared to disturb her brother, promising herself that if they ever try it again, she will strike them down without hesitation. The scene then shifts to Ivana, who approaches her with concern and asks whether she is all right. Hergine calmly assures her that she is perfectly fine. Not long afterward, they receive news that the Count has returned as well. Hergine immediately goes to welcome him, but the moment Sean notices the mark on her face, she quickly brushes it aside and asks about Austin instead. Sean tells her that he has already bought everything Austin could possibly need. Curious, Hergine wonders whether the two of them managed to have a proper conversation, and Sean admits that the boy is actually quite intelligent. After saying that, he quietly excuses himself and leaves, causing Hergine to stare after him in confusion, wondering why he is acting so strangely. At the same time, she begins to think about Austin and realizes that she cannot seem to find any flaws in him at all. Time passes, and the University Academy Festival finally arrives. Hergine looks around at the bustling grounds, amazed by the enormous crowd gathered for the celebration. The announcer explains that visitors are expected to participate in various interactive activities throughout the festival, while Ivana remarks that she still has a few questions about the event. Before long, Austin steps onto the stage, and Hergine instantly lights up with excitement at the sight of him. He begins delivering his presentation, and the audience soon breaks into enthusiastic applause. Even Ivana joins in, thinking that the confident young man before her seems completely different from the student she had seen earlier, and proudly believing that this is the remarkable young master she knows. When the final results are announced, Austin is declared the best presenter of the day. The host steps forward, places a medal around his neck, praises his outstanding performance, and warmly invites him closer, while asking how he feels about receiving the honor. As Austin looks around the crowd, his eyes finally find Hergine approaching him with a beautiful bouquet of flowers. She reaches him, embraces him tightly, and silently offers her heartfelt congratulations. Later, inside Austin's room, Hergine notices that everything has completely changed. Austin explains that his brother-in-law arranged all of it, including the fine shirt he is wearing. While talking, he notices Sean standing quietly outside the room. Hergine then pulls Austin aside and asks what he truly thinks about Sean. Instead of answering immediately, Austin begins to snicker, leaving her completely puzzled. Eventually, he admits that Sean does not seem like a bad person at all, and that, from what he can tell, he appears to care for her very deeply. Those words instantly make Hergine blush, and she becomes so flustered that she starts hitting Austin in embarrassment. Austin can only wonder why she suddenly reacts that way, while Hergine scolds him for saying such things so casually. Her reaction only makes Austin smile even more, and he continues teasing her playfully. The scene later shifts to Ivana, who tells Hergine that she has heard an interesting rumor. According to what she knows, the Prince of Britain is an admirer of King Kiraxis, and the captain serving under him is said to be even greater than the legendary hero of the 100-Year War. Shortly afterward, another person arrives and informs them that a carriage has been sent by the British royal family. Lapine quietly explains that, just in case, he has hidden something beneath the carriage seat, and if it ever has to be taken out, he will personally handle the matter himself. Because of that, Hergine does not need to worry, though he still advises her to remain careful. With everything prepared, Hergine makes her way toward the carriage. As she approaches, her eyes meet Sean's for a brief moment, and the two silently look at one another before climbing inside. Once they are seated, Hergine suddenly remembers that the hidden item is beneath her own seat. The thought immediately makes her nervous, and her expression changes. Sean notices her unusual behavior and quietly watches her for a moment before wondering what could possibly be wrong and what she is trying so hard to hide from him. His Highness mentions how he believes that the knight's name was Varnes, before asking if Sean would happen to know who that is. Hergine lets out a gasp as she turns her head to the side, sweating bullets. An awkward silence then occurs as Sean remains silent to this question. Hergine covers her face with a fan as she notes how Varnes is her. and wonders if the Prince of Britain knows about this. She then wonders to herself if she is very noticeable right now, which she clearly is. She then glances over to the side as she wonders if Sean knows. Sean then speaks up as he says he does know of Varnus, to Hergine's shock. Sean then rambles on about how Varnus is a knight of his that had heard Sean's story and signed up for the competition without reporting it. Sean says he found out after the competition and has already scolded Varnus for it, and that Varnus only did it in the name of loyalty, so the prince should be understanding. All this causes Hergines to note how Sean has a way with words. Hergines then notes how Sean would of course believe that a knight of his order participated in this event, since those certain individuals Sean encountered were utterly defeated by said knight. The prince then says he sees, to which Xuan apologizes about it. Hergine starts to think this is working, as the prince tells Sean it is all right. The prince then says he would like to see Varnus, since that guy is the talk of the town right now. The prince mentions that he heard Varnus has incredible swordsmanship. Sean tells him that Varnus could not accompany them this time, and talks about next time. Hergines is nervous in the background at all this before Sean then turns his eyes over to her. He then asks her if it is hot out today. She flaps her fan as she says yes, and that it is quite hot. Internally, she wonders how much this guy actually knows, as she feels glad to have a fan right now. She then thinks of how it's such a good thing that Sean is an eloquent speaker. Sean turns his eyes to the side as a flashback then occurs. He received a report from Reeve that talked about the 3 students and their families. Reeves then tells Sean that it seems as though one of their knights also participated in the axe sword competition. Sean asked who, to which Reeves said the name Varnus. Sean tells him they don't have a knight who goes by that name. Reeves tells him yes before mentioning how this knight did not do much to the commoners, but was seen tormenting the 3 students terribly. Sean then silently states that this is Hergines then, and how it's no wonder she allowed his outing with Estienne so easily. Reeves says pardon, to which Sean then says never mind. Sean then continues to stare at Hergines, who seems to be nibbling on some food. He then has a smile to himself and lets out a soft chuckle. Later we see a small dessert getting presented with some golden tea. As Sean starts to eat the food, Hergines seems shocked and also flinches. Sean wipes his mouth as Hergines wonders what she just witnessed right now. She stares at an empty plate as she recalls how he is normally way more picky about his food. Later, we see the sun is setting, and everyone stands at the gate with a carriage waiting right behind. The prince apologizes and tells the pair that he will see them soon and that they may come by for tea anytime. Sean tells His Highness that it would be an honor. As they walk back to the carriage, Hergines then wonders why the bodyguards are not in the same group while glancing around. As she sits in the carriage, she sniffs to smell something strange. Hergines then calls at a man, to which he responds, asking what the lady needs. She asks what the scent is, to which he tells her there was a foul scent somewhere inside the carriage, so he sprayed some perfume. Hergines then wonders to herself if Sean is okay with this, as she personally does not like this scent one bit. Day turns to night as a crescent moon sits atop the sky. The carriage rides off into the dark forest as Hergines leans her head to stare out of the window. She then turns her head as she notes how Sean seems to be very quiet right now. Sean seems to be struggling as he makes a noise. This causes Hergines to turn blue, as her expression changes into that of worry. She rushes over to him as she yells his name and asks if he is okay. She gets goosebumps as she then hears him cough. She holds both her hands up as they are not fully covered in blood. She continues to stare in horror for a moment more before yelling to stop the carriage. The carriage skids to a halt as Hergines then lays Sean down on his back first. She then pulls off his coat as she notes how the next step is to help him breathe. As she leans her head over, he then tries to tell her the words poison. Hergines then thinks back to numerous events. She recalls her people speaking about a potion that becomes deadly when combined with something else, the strange food they were served at the table, and also the strange smell coming from the carriage. The host of possibilities angers her as she yells, "Damn it!" Someone then yells to die and calls to the enemy of Hegleton. A guard then yells who goes there before he is then subsequently struck down. Blood then splats on the window of the carriage. The guards then yell that this is an ambush and to stop these attackers. Hergines then has a determined look on her face as she stares back at a bleeding and incapacitated Sean. She puts her head down as the sounds of battle rage on outside of the carriage. With her bloody hands, she then grabs at the box that was secretly hidden in her seat. She thinks about how if she were to take these out right now. She recalls how Sean may not be able to move, but that he is still conscious. This means that he will know that she truly is heard. She then closes her eyes and starts to open the box. A large flash then appears from the box, as Hergines wonders if she will die as Hergines or live as Herg. She holds up her unsheathed blade as the sounds of a drum rings. Sean turns his head stunned as he stares at the blade in her hand. His facial expression says it all. An assassin bursts through the door of the carriage with a red slash. After he does so, he stops and appears stunned. Herginus looks quite enraged as she silently says Sean's name. He is speechless and trembling as she tells him that starting from now, she pulls her sword out and the sheaths drop to the floor as she says she'll give him the answer that he has been waiting for. She gets into a dual sword stance as he then appears agitated. She then mentions to him that he should make sure to repay her for saving him for a third time before he ever dies. She then drops his full legal name. She then bolts out the door in a flash as he remains quiet. He lays in the dark room as she clashes with the guy. With a sword swing, a strike hits near the top of Hergin's head. Her hairpin then drops to the floor near her heels. Another strike comes as she ducks her head down and dodges. She swings her blade wide, which causes 3 of the assassins to jump back. They hold their blades firmly as they yell, asking who in the world this woman is. They all then look at one another nodding, as they seem to have a plan. They all then leap into the air like frogs ready to rain hell on her genies. All the blades are coming right at her, as she stares up, stunned. Her eyes then flash as she then realizes that all these guys are after Sean. She holds off all the blades as she now realizes that they all must be highly skilled specialists then. As she holds them off, she continues to think of how the poison is still spreading in Sean's body as they continue this battle, and that she does not have much time left. The men are then puzzled as their swords start to creak. Herginus then jumps straight up like a beam of light as we then see her twirling in the air with her blades. Her face is full of determination, as she mentions how she usually does not like bloodshed, but that she will need to kill these guys. She then drops to the floor and drops a heavy attack on one of the assassins. He holds off her one attack with his blade, before she then uses her other blade to slice him up. Herginus then thinks to herself about how she should have killed this guy off in one blow. A splat can then be heard as we then see another assassin has struck his blade near her legs. Her thighs start to bleed as she grimaces in pain. Another strike then comes in from the side as she turns her head. She ducks underneath it as it passes right by her head. She stares up at her reflection on the blade. Her mind then wanders as she notes how she needs these guys dead, just like those she had taken out while in battle. Her sword then shoots forward as she then stabs at the man who missed her. The man's face grimaces as Herginus' eyes then start to light up. She moves her blade away as a large splatter then moves along with the blade. As blood drips from her sword, the other man stands and stares, speechless. Hearts start to beat very rapidly as Herginus then stands and turns their way. She stares with malicious intent as the assassins then yell to not go easy on her just because she's a lady. The wind then passes by the battlefield. Side note, but she's doing all of this in heels, that's crazy. Herginus then starts to move her blade. She seems to get into a new stance for an attack as she holds one blade close to her face. The attackers then take a large gulp and actually blush as well. She then suddenly lunges at all of them with blue air all around her. All the men stand stunned in the moment before Herginus then starts to spin around in the tornado of slashes and slices that takes out multiple men. Her spin whams another guy before she then stands and slashes someone that was on the floor. She does not stop, however, as the sounds of the guy's cries can be heard. 2 guys stand in fear while trembling and quivering. She continues to fight as one guy thinks of how they are supposed to be fighting against Sean, who is poisoned right now. He notes how they all are supposed to be the best of the best fighters trained to face anything, as this was their chance to avenge Haglaton. Herginus rips up another guy as this man notes who could have known the Countess of Targail was so good at swords. A man falls over as he notes that she is not just good. She kicks a man as he then says she looks like that monster from the 100-Year War, the one they call Herge. A flurry of strikes then moves across the screen like this is Fruit Ninja. Herginus moves her blade to the side, as the man having all those thoughts got lines drawn on him like a dissection table. Herginus then takes some deep breaths as she notes it is over. She turns her head as she mentions how it is now time to go help Sean. Her eyes then turn to see a weapon to her man's neck. She stops and stands stunned. The guys yell to stand back or else. Sean sweats as he looks angrily forward. The man then yells that he will kill this guy if she does not. We get a bird's eye view of the scene before we see Herginus' worried expression and the weasel man's giggling face. Sean sweats as he is still unable to speak. The guy then yells for Herginus to drop her sword and to put them far away. Herginus proceeds to lift up both blades before we then see each of her 2 blood-covered blades hit the floor with a clank. The weirdo then giggles again as he notes how good it feels to have someone do as he says. The wind blows by Herginus as the man then wonders if this means she will do anything he tells her to. His tongue makes some weird motions as he says good, and tells her slowly to come closer. Sean flinches at this as we then see Herginus put a foot forward to take a step. The weirdo giggles as Hergenes then continues to step closer and closer. We see the wound on her leg and then her determined look. The guy continues to chuckle as he then tells her to take off her dress. Sean clenches his teeth at this and flinches. This causes the man to ask how he is moving and tells him to stay still or he'll be killed. Blood starts to drip as Hergenes then scowls and says to stay still. The sound of a slip can be heard. Hergenes closes her eyes before we then hear dropping sound. The creep in entranced as we see Sean has the most demonic eyes. Hergenes then proceeds to stand still as the creep stares before moving up close right next to her. As he starts to move ever so close, Hergenes then gives off a smile. Her bloody hand then springs upward as she gives him an uppercut square on the chin. The dagger he was holding then falls into her hands. She then digs her heel into his body as she then stands above him with a red glare in her eyes. She tells him with a scary look on her face that she is sorry, but that she throws quite a mean punch as well. Side note, but she knocked his hairline all the way back too, with that punch. We then hear the pathetic rodent squeal as some red liquid goes flying into the air. Later the sun comes up, and the setting is now back at their estate. Her men are stunned as we hear Hergenes come in yelling for Ivana. She carries Sean on her shoulder as she tells Ivana that Sean is in trouble. Later the room is candlelit as Ivana tells Hergenes to take her time and to tell Ivana everything that Hergenes can remember. Hergenes is shaking and can only mention the words poison and that Sean was poisoned. She says that it had something to do with the food and the poison. Ivana then yells to bring in warm water and a heater, a mortar as well, and to grab the medicinal herbs from her bag. Hergenes sits up staring over at an unconscious Sean. Ivana then tells her captain that she must be treated as well, to which Hergenes agrees. She holds up Hergenes as Ivana tells her to be careful. Hergenes looks over to see the look of sorrow on the face of Reeve. As she moves by, she turns her head to see this. Later we see her in bed and dazed as she stares at the ceiling with a towel over her forehead. She then rises up on her bed before we then see a room still lit up. She walks in to see Reeve still sitting by his boss's side. He turns as he finally notices her presence. He asks if she is awake, to which she then asks him how long she slept. He tells her for about a day. She then asks for Reeve to send word to the Brietton Palace in her stead. She mentions how there would be an uproar if she personally sent it to, which Reeve agrees. She tells him to make sure it is known that she is recovering from the shock of the incident as well. She notes how Reeve likely wants to ask her so many questions. As she looks at Sean, she thinks about how she cannot tell him anything though. Her eyes continue to look before she then turns and thanks Captain Reeve. He stands silent and continues to do so even after she leaves the room. Later we see 4 cups on the table as she then sees Ivana call her captain. Hergenes then says that she is sorry, to which Ivana then says that she did nothing wrong. The other guys then tell her there is no need to and ask why she is saying sorry. Ivana then talks of how they could sense a bit of the Haglatin accent when the horsemen talked, and this is why she had told Ralphine to put the swords in the carriage. She tells Hergenes that the poison those guys used only reacts to a certain scent, and that it was a rare one so even Kyroxis would react to it. Ivana mentions she was able to detoxify it, and that Sean should wake up by tomorrow depending on how quickly he recovers. Hergenes somberly notes the word tomorrow as she sits at the table. She then says she will have to make a decision. It has to be done before he wakes up. It will be about whether she decides to stay here or if she will flee. She then speaks up to the group, telling them that Sean has found out who she is. This causes silence to fall into the room as a guy then speaks up saying they will follow her decision. She calls to Rafai as someone then tells her he has a personal thought. The other guy then says that since Kyroxis owes her 3 times for saving his life, then he likely would not hold a grudge against her. Ivana then nods as she says that is right. The guy then covers his mouth as he then adds that he thinks Xuan likes the captain so there's no need to worry. This causes Ivana to slam the table and yell what is Hergenes then blushes. Ivana then attacks the guy asking how dare he say that, to which he mentions how this is obvious. Ivana bites at his head as he then tells Hergenes to make sure to at least talk to Shaq to Xuan before she runs away. Hergenes sits stunned by all this as she then says, okay. Later we see her at the door nervous. She creaks the door open as she thinks about how she should see him one last time before she thinks about it. She notes how he surely is not awake yet. She walks in and the door clicks behind her. She stands from afar as we see Sean staring out of the balcony into the night sky. He stands with his hands on the balcony as Hergenes says his name in a silent voice. He then turns his head as he then calls her by the name Herge. The two stand before one another as his eyes gaze at her. He notes to himself how he had already known that the food was poisoned. He also notes how it appears as though the prince himself seemed to not be aware of this. He thought to himself how it would take way more than a little poison to take him down, and that whoever did this must not know that much about him. However, things didn't pan out in the carriage, as he recalls back to Hergenes holding up a bloody hand saying his name. As he lay there, he thought about how in the past he usually would not have a care if he lived or died. But things are now different, as who would be there to protect her Jennies if he were to die? In that situation, he internally yelled, "No," and tried to get his body to move. His hand quivered as he yelled at himself to do it. He also yelled her name internally, as he saw her hands and face. His mind then goes back to when she told him that starting now, she would give him the answer he had been waiting for. Also that she told him that he had to make sure to repay her for saving his life for a third time before he ever died. With his eyes wide open, he reached his hand out for her Jennies. His hand now reaches as well as he then calls her Herg and gives her a hug. He leans his head over as he thinks back to the past sword fight. He notes how he once had a hunch, but that turns out that he was right. Also that now he is very glad that he was right, as she truly is Herg. His eyes open again as he then again calls her Herg. He then asks her why. Why did she lie to him? Her eyes stare back at him widely before falling back down to the ground. She holds her hand to her chest as she has an unhappy look on her face. She then holds the side of her arm as she tells him it was because she could not tell him. He stares at her, stunned, before closing his eyes and trembling. He turns his eyes as he then asks her if she really thought that he was on the prince's side. She responds to him with just a nod, as he seems to be taken aback by this. He then sighs as he puts his palm over his face. He then reaches his hand out before placing it on her face. She blushes at this. She looks up as he calls her name again and tells her to know this. He holds both of his hands on her face as he tells her that he is on her side. He steps closer as he asks if she can trust him now, that he is fully on her side. Their eyes meet one another as the pair blush. The memories that the two shared are then played. As Hergines then puts her head down smiling, she tells him that she will, as a flash appears before him. She says to him that she will trust him and remain by his side. He then gives her an immediate smooch as she then gasps for air. They continue to kiss as he asks her mid-session, why is it? He asks her why it feels like she could disappear on him, even though she stands before him right now. They then move, as we hear Sean then say, please. They then both flop onto the bed, as Sean tells her to convince him that he's wrong. She asks him what he means by that. He tells her to convince him that she's not going to leave him. As he looks over her, she asks what he means by convincing. He then brushes his hands on her face before his hand, then moves to her shoulder as he grabs the cloth. His hands move to the side, which causes what he is holding to slip. Her face is bright red as she blushes at this motion. Sean then leans over to her and gives her a kiss. He then sits up and lets out a sigh as his robe is pulled to the side to show some ripped abs. Hergines then sits up and pulls her clothing together. Shuan then tells her that this is her last chance if she ever really wants to run away from him. He holds her face as he tells her he will never let her get away from him after this offer expires. She then has a smile on her face as she asks him why would she ever do that. She puts her hand on his face as she then reminds him that he still has to repay her back for all the times she has saved his life. Sean smiles at this statement as he asks her if that is so. He then crouches forward for another kiss. He lays atop of her as the pair kiss. Sean then does something which causes our female lead to flinch. He huffs as he gives a lick. He then comes across the bandage that has been put on her thigh. He looks over as he asks her if it hurts. In her mind, she recalls that he is the same guy that was coughing up blood earlier, asking this. She then tells him he's the one that is a patient and not her. This causes Sean to lean over as he questions how she called him a patient. He tells her that she won't believe him if he told her how well he feels right now. That was low-key smooth as it draws a shocked expression out of our female lead's face. Hergines then grabs his shoulder. As she tells him in case he has forgotten, she is the one who gets to decide when they spend the night together. Sean then proceeds to whisper in her ear saying, then, he will make sure that she feels good as his hands move elsewhere. He tells her that he will try his best as she blushes even more so. This causes Hergines to then nervously yell okay and fine. As they kiss, he tells her this will be much better than the first. He guarantees it. We later see the light in the room and some white cloth on the floor. A hand is clenching at the bed. Hergines holds her hand to her face as she asks Sean what he is doing. Sean, with a devious look on his face, asks if there is a problem. He says he is making it feel good. As they kiss, our female lead does note it really is better than last time, and that it feels strange. He moves his lips away from hers as he then calls her by Herg once again. He tells her he will go slow, which makes her heart beat. He tells her very slowly as she lets out a sound. We hear some breathing, and the pair then hold hands. They kiss once again before Herg then calls out his name. He responds by saying her name as well. Sean calls her his love, as she calls him, very sweet. She puts her hand on his face as she wonders what is going on, and that every time they embrace, it feels so nice. The pair have one last visible kiss as the time then passes ahead. Time passes into the morning, as we see Sean sitting upright and putting his hand over the head of a sleeping Herganese. As he brushes her hair, her eyes then start to open. She sits up as well and rubs her eyes as he tells her good morning. He then again calls her Herg as she looks back at him saying Sean. She tells him it is very weird to hear him calling her by that name and asks if he finds it weird as well. He seems stunned as he tells her not at all. She exclaims what to this statement, as he then tells her that he had already known she was Herg all this time. She squeals as she finds this all surprising. She then turns her head as she notes how she knew it. She notes how it's better this way, rather than having a flurry of evidence getting thrown at her and being scolded about it. Sean then tells her that he has always wondered something. He asks her that after the battle did she ever think about him. The pair stare face to face in silence for a moment. Herganese then speaks up and tells him, of course, to his amazement. He then blushes as he asks her why. She is confused as she wonders if there really needs to be a reason for this. His heart continues to beat as she then wonders if he really wants to know that bad. Her arm then squirms and fidgets as she says, well, he was very exceptional out there. He thinks of the word exceptional as he looks over at her. He then grows cat ears and his eyes sparking as he wishes to hear more from her. She is puzzled by this as she sits in silence. She then thinks of how she should put this. She tells him that when she was with him, it felt like they were connected, almost as if their soul was in unison. She says it was all in an odd way as she places her hand on him. He then grabs at the hand she placed to his chest. She then lets out a gasp as he gives off a grin, asking if it's a little too early for this. He tells her that he will not hold back if she keeps this up and that he is a patient still, but if she really wants it then. She then slaps his shoulder as she tells him he needs to stop saying things like that. The two then kiss again though, as he then says he would like to ask one more thing. She asks him what it is now, as he then questions why she chose to save him this time. She gives him an immediate response saying, no reason at all. This causes him to get irritated as another awkward silent sequence kicks in. He then says, okay, and that they should do it one more time then. She yells as she tells him it is time to get up now. Later we see it is a bright and beautiful day as the sun shines on the manor. We see her men, as Rafine says, he is glad that they did not have to leave the Targail house. Ivana looks very irked and irritated, as the other guy mentions how he feels the same way and that he likes staying here. He continues to start talking about how Herganese and Kyroxis make a great couple, but he gets stopped mid-sentence by Rafine. Ivana turns at the two guys in deep anger as we see the couple stand before all three of them. Ivana then turns to give a glare at Sean in specific. She tells him that she has got her eyes on him. He sweats a bit as he stands in silence to this threat. The other guy then says it would appear as though things have turned out for the better then. Later we see a candle lit lightly as Sean then sits and talks to Herganese about the ambush by the Haglatan. He speaks of how he and the Prince of Breton met in secret this time, as Herganese says she sees. He tells her that he will be handling this personally as she asks him if there won't be another assassination attempt again. She jokingly asks him what if she had to save him for a fourth time. He tells her that would be even better as she'd have to stay with him until he can pay her back. Bro's Riz is insane right now. That poison really did wonders. She is taken aback by the comment as well as she sits speechless. She is then seen chasing him with a pillow as she has had enough of his Riz and asks if he wishes to die by her hands. The setting is then switched back to the Palace of Valois. We see a very sparkly and fancy cup of tea and dessert on the table. We then see someone known as Yahello, and this is the Crown Princess. The Crown Prince named Raymond can also be seen as he is seated at the table as well. The two sit across from each other at the table speechless as the awkwardness sets in. Someone then comes in to tell His Highness that an urgent message has come in. The prince then bows, telling the princess, sorry for disrupting the tea time, but this is an urgent matter. She tells him, that is too bad, and to go on then. She sits looking in silence as we later see scrolls in the room. Someone calls to His Highness as it is said that the Queen of the Rio Kingdom will be visiting this empire soon. The prince asks if it will be the queen herself. It is mentioned that the rich spices and exotic luxuries have caused many countries to try and contact the Rio Kingdom, but none of them ever got a reply back. The prince stands up as he notes how it seems as though their luck is yet to run out after the victory from the 100-year battle. The advisor tells His Highness, congratulations, as it is said the queen is going to meet Illwoods, and that they can use an Anexian portal from here. The prince thinks of how it is true then, that Illwoods and the queen are close. He then slams his hand on the table as he says very well. He says that they should then go and prepare for the queen's arrival then. The setting changes to the sun shining on an eastern-looking building. A man scurries into a room as he holds a scroll and tells a royal that the letter from Valois has arrived. It is the queen who puts her hand to the side as the scroll is handed to her. She opens it, as it is noted that this is Ryo Hun, who is the queen of the Ryo kingdom. She then simply tossed the scroll to the floor, as she mentions how if it were not for Illwoods, then she would have never agreed to this. The servant who is bowing then tells her that the fate of their land is on the line though. The queen then thinks as she notes how yes, this would be a good idea, as there is a chance that the one they have been seeking is also there. Back at the main couple estate, the sun is starting to set. A fire flickers over a hand, as someone wonders why the queen really is coming to Valoir. Hergenes asks what he means by queen, to which Sean tells her that the queen of Ryo will be visiting. Hergenes then recalls how this woman was famous for never leaving her kingdom though, to which Sean then mentions how he wonders what the queen could be planning. Hergenes then has a glum look on her face as she then realizes they won't have time to stop by somewhere then. She then mentions how she'll also have to tell Kalia to release Rosalie, which leaves Sean speechless. Sean tells her not to worry though, as they should have the time to stop by him. This causes Hergenes to beam with a smile as she asks really. He tells her that she may need to ride a horse though, to get there on time. She calls this easy, as she then reminds him that she rode a horse with him on her back last time. The sun continues to fall under the green and lush land, as we see the couple both on a horse. Hergenes takes a breath as she mentions how they managed to make it. She looks atop the cliff, as she notes how it seems as though there is something going on right now. Sean tells her that the last report he received was that they were having a hard time dealing with bandits. Hergenes then thinks back, and then mentions how this was the reason they sent those guys here last time. We see a bunch of men near gates, and carrying torches, as they are then stunned as a group of people on horses arrive. They hold up their weapons as they ask who goes there. In the shadows, we see the figure of the main couple. The men hold up their torches, as they seem to finally see. They mention, "It is the Lord," as Hergenes then comes into view. The people then mention how the Lord of Hemoth is here, and they then cheer for Lord Targael. The people start to scurry, as Hergenes then drops from atop her horse. Someone then appears saying he is Dymas and the keeper of Hemoth. He says while bowing, that it is a pleasure to meet Lord Targael. Sean then points his finger to the side as he tells the boy that he is not the Lord, and that it is the girl over there. Hergenes then asks if he said his name was Damis. He is stunned and blushing, as he tells her yes, and that's him. She tells him it is nice to meet him, to which he says it is nice to meet Lord Targael as well. Sean then angrily says, "Nice to meet Demas," as Demas nervously says yes to that. Hergenes then gives him a bump as she asks what is wrong with Sean. She then asks what is going on, as everyone seems to be out in the middle of the night. Someone speaks up saying that many bandits have been raiding Hemoth these days. It is noted that it may be due to the bandits thinking that this place has abundant people, so they assumed that there would be a lot to plunder here. Demas says that their recent opposers are a group of bandits called the Redvo. They were able to beat these bandits though, thanks to the people and militia that Hergenes sent. It is however noted that the town thinks these guys will be back though. Sean then asks, "So?" which causes Demas to get nervous. Sean then continues to mention how it appears as though they do not realize what they are facing, and then asks what they plan to do about this. Demas is dizzy as he says they would first block the entrance with wood. Sean then calls his name as he asks Demas if he's getting paid to be the keeper of this land. Demas gasps as he tells Count Targael yes. Sean then asks if Demas realizes that Sean's wife is much kinder than the other lords, to which Demas says of course. Sean then tosses the papers as he tells Demas he should be bringing out better reports and not this trash. Demas covers up as he yells "Yes, sir" to Sean. He then dashes out as Hergenes is still silent and pondering to herself. She then turns and glares at Sean before asking why he did that. He says, "What?" To which Hergenes tells him that Demas is just a commoner, so he does not know how to deal with this yet. She mentions that Sean should not have scolded the guy so harshly. Sean then tells her that those who are a liability must get dealt with quickly, and that this way, nothing bad will happen. Hergenes then gives him a look. Sean in his mind is angry about how the guy seemed to like Hergenes too much, while Hergenes covers her mouth and wonders if she is sensing jealousy right. Later we see a lot of torches, as it is the base camp of the Redvo bandit. A man sits in the middle of the table near the fireplace as he thinks. He then speaks up saying that the Hemoth militia are not just a bunch of townspeople flocking together. Someone else at the table agrees and mentions how some of those people are veterans. The boss then says all right, as mentions how the Hemoth people do have experience, but that there are not many of them. He then mentions how Hemoth is far from the capital, so it would be hard to call for help. In addition, it's not big enough of a town to call for help anyways either. He then tells his men to assemble all the other bandits in this area. He raises his sword as he yells that Redvo shall be the one to take Hemoth, to which his men say yes, sir. Later in the night, we see some houses. Hergenes walks the streets as she thinks about how she was very worried about Hemoth from afar, but that she is very glad to now see that they are doing well. Ivana then waves her hand in the air as she ushers her captain to come over. We see trees and then some purple flowers on the ground. Ivana says that they must pick these flowers when they are blooming and carrying the evening dew. That way, they can use these as a powerful hallucinogen. She even mentions how these are normally very hard to get and continues to ramble on as Hergines just turns to the side to look at the town. She looks down as she sees Sean getting a report from Damis. As she looks from above, she notes how it is weird with Sean these days. She mentions how the only thing that has changed is that he knows she is Herg, but that whenever he calls her by that name, she notes her heart as she puts her hand near her chest. A yell can then be heard as a stunned Hergines then turns her head. She yells for Ivana as one of the guys wonders what is going on and if Ivana tripped. The two look in silence as we see in front of them emptiness and trees. We then see some guys in the distance holding swords. This causes the three to get confused as we see some bandits holding Ivana and telling the others to not move. The three of them then have blank faces and remain silent as they clearly are not impressed by these lowlifes. An awkward silence is then heard as we see a top view of the current situation. The dudes who are holding Ivana then get confused as they wonder why in the world the people across from them are so calm. A big bite is then felt as the man who got bitten asks the other dude why he is just standing there and to help him. Ivana is angry herself as she asks her captor if he ever washes. The red-haired dude is laughing as he asks Ivana who told her to go running around on her own. Ivana yells at him to shut up as Hergeni stands in silence. Then from behind the bandits arrives the leader who scoffs and asks if Hergenes and her men are the people of Himov. He has his eyes looking down as Hergenes then tells him, "Not exactly." The caveman-looking guy then blushes as he laughs. He then mentions how no one ever told him Himov had such a beauty, and he then asks if she is the mistress of the Lord. He calls her quite something as she yells, "Hey." He questions how she said "hey," as he angrily then says how dare she cut him off. She tells him that is not what she meant and that she just wanted to clarify something. She notes how he said mistress of the Lord before stating that she is the Lord herself. Later at a large red tent, we see Sean inside as Damis tells him that they have divided their militia into 12 squads and that they will deliver command to the squad leaders of each division. Sean then tells him this is empty before also saying to reduce the squad numbers by half as it would be too hard to manage if there are too many. Damis nervously says, "Yes, sir." Sean starts to speak again, as Reeve then wonders what has gotten into Sean. Sean normally never cares for anything that others can do, and then Reeve wonders if this is all because Damis blushed when he saw Hergenes. A large bell sound is then heard, as the two men then turn with alertness and seriousness. Sean's leg then starts to walk forward, as we then see the mountains are filled with legions of torches that stand together in groups. Reeve tells Sir Kyroxis that the torches are moving in order, as he mentions how these guys must know battle formation. Sean seems enraged as Reeve stares at him and Reeve then turns his head around as he asks where Lady Targail is. Sean then looks down as he says that she is at the border with Elazar. This causes both Reeve and Damis to get stunned, as Sean then calls for Reeve with vigor. Reeve kneels down immediately, saying, "Yes, sir." Sean says he will be leaving Reeve in charge, and tells Reeve to take the knights and militia to go protect Himov. He tells Reeve that he will go find Elisar and Hergens, and that they will push inward from the outside. Reeve says yes, sir, as Damis drops to his knee as well. Sean then mentions that there is one more thing, and that if things end up being dangerous. Damis lets out a gulp as Sean then continues to say to leave him off if things come to that, but to protect the people at all costs. Later we see the big cave guy yell, mentioning how a lady is the Lord, and asks if this is even possible. He yells up at his men and mentions how this girl is saying she is the Lord. This draws out a group laugh, as he then says that Himov will be his soon as his men have entered the land. Hergine then turns wondering what. She hears the bell and sees the torches as she says damn. She then grabs at her sword as she mentions how she has to get rid of these non-monetizable words as soon as possible and get to Sean. She speaks up saying Himov is under attack and that they need to get rid of these scum and move on now. She tells her guys they do not know how many are here, so they should save their strength. They reply yes ma'am to her, as Hergenes then starts to pull out a blade. She gets into a stance as she then mentions the name of Ivana and says that she will save her. The meathead then scoffs as he asks if she really thinks he'd go easy on a woman. He tells her not to worry though, as he will not hurt her. Hergenes then lets out a light laugh as she then tells him to not think she will go easy on him since he's a man. The dude then leaps forward saying what, and calling her a little. He then tells him men to kill all the men and to make sure that the women stay alive. As he starts to fall, we see Hergenes staring upwards. He swings his club down as Hergenes successfully dodges his attack, She then moves right by his leg. As his men start to charge in, we see that she slashes with one of her blades on the big meathead leader. The guy turns his eyes to the side to see the wound she has inflicted on him. Hergines, after having slashed him, has eyes that light up with the moon. The guy then has tears in his eyes as he yells for a full-on retreat. His men yell, "What?" as they crouch on the floor with him. As Hergines stares, he yells, saying that he said to retreat. As the three then run, we see Hergines note that she thought this guy would be a lot tougher than that. She holds her sword to her head, as she calls this boring. A rustle then can be heard behind her, as she then turns her head wondering what that was. She recalls not hearing anyone come by and then wonders who that is. She holds her sword up, ready, as we then see Sean in the moonlight with both of his hands up. She calls his name before we then hear some screaming. The three guys are still running as the crew watch them. The red-haired guy mentions how those dudes should have brought more people to fight with them as Ivana pats her the dust off her outfit. He then mocks Ivana, saying to be honest that she was scared, to which she calls him an idiot and says no way. The guy then turns to see a figure near Herg as he wonders if they did not finish all the bandits off. He then says he will do the honors then, as Ivana then grabs a hold of him. The two then dash off as the main couple come face to face. Hergina starts to ask how did he, but he then steps over and proceeds to give her a big hug. She blushes at this as we then see Sean smiling and saying that he was worried for nothing as she is Herge of Elizar. She asks what he is doing here, and what about Himov? He tells her that to him she comes first. He tells her that he left the protection of Himov to Sir Cullens, and that two of them can start to work in from the border. She tells him all right, and that should hurry. The crew then stop and stare down, as it is noted how there's actually quite a lot of men. One guy then asks, so what? And that they should just kill them all. As they dash, some of the bandits then turn in horror. Sean and Herge then strike with blue and purple slashes respectively. The red-haired guy slashes with his red blade, while she sees Ivana and Rafine in the trees firing off arrows. Ivana flips up some bottles, as we then see a big boom on the battlefield that sends many bandits flying. With the explosions in the background, we then see a whole panoramic of the wild battle going down between the main characters and the group of bandits. Both Herge and Sean swing their blades with cold stares in their faces. We then see the both of them strike at the same dude who gets caught between both of their slashes. Sean stares at his dripping blade, as he then tells Hergenes that it has been so long. She asks him what has been so long, to which he tells her doing all of this with her. She is stunned by the statement, as she then thinks back to all the times she had seen him before. She then has a smile as she mentions how it is nice to be with him again. He is surprised by the comment, before he then has a warm smile. She seems to stare back at him before then wondering what is up with his face, and wonders if he really likes her or something. Her men then yell and tells Hergenes that they are done with the bandits over there. Herc and Sean then get back into focus, as Sean then asks his dear wife if they should finish the job then. Time would then pass in the night, as we then see a bottle in the air before an arrow then strikes right through it. This leads to a big explosion that would send many of the bandits going flying. Someone yells, "Damn it," and tells the others to kill whoever is chucking the bombs. They then taunt, saying there she is. The bandits then charge at a tree before their feet then splash on something blue. They move their feet up, as they wonder what this is. A green gas then moves from under their shoes. As the man raises his feet, stunned, the guys then yell in agony as one of them says that his legs are melting. Rafin has an indifferent look on his face, as Ivana can be seen smiling. He turns and calls to Ivana, who is carrying a red bottle. He tells her that these guys will die anyway, and that she should leave the bottle alone. It is then thrown down, as he calls this cruel. A big boom can then be seen as the two sit atop the tree. Rafin covers his ears before then getting his bow ready for an attack. The arrow flies through the air and then into the crowd of bandits. One guy charging in stands right in front of this arrow. He is then taken out before he can attack the red-haired guy. This prompts the guy to then raise his hand in the air and thank Rafin. He then asks the bandits how dare they try to kill him. He then lets out an evil laugh as a whirlwind of red strikes flies up in the air along with all the bandits. The big scene going on behind him seems to not bother Sean at all. He looks over confused as he sees two chicken bandits. The guys note how they thought they were going to win, as they had at least 50 times more people than their enemies. They wonder why, as a scary Sean stares over them. They note how this man is yet to draw his sword, and that he must be a monster. Those behind the two then yell to not back out, as they can all attack this guy at once. They then spring up and lunge at Sean in a big horde. Sean's eyes are dark as he swings his blade. With one large swing, we see a large attack form, and throw all of his attackers back while screaming in pain. Sean is silent, as he then looks down to see a broken sword. He wonders if it really did break again, as he then tosses it to the side. He then grabs a sword from another bandit, as some other guys then yell that this is their chance. Sean has lost their sword, and they should get him now. The three then jump in at Sean, as something then moves right near Sean. A foot then uses Sean's back as a launch pad, as we then see Herge flying through the night sky above the trees. The three guys yell, "What the?" before a large shadow is then cast upon all of them. Herge then lets out a ball of blue sword strikes that send wind and attacks flying at all of the bandits. We see smoking moving in front of her from the use of the sword, as she then seems to notice something. She looks into the distance, as she then sees a figure in the trees. It turns out to be Reeve, as Herg then says shoot, and wonders if he saw that. Reeve stares up at the air in awe as Hergenes looks down, wondering if he saw that. We then see Sean just then slash right through a bandit right next to him. He then turns his head and puts his attention elsewhere. He screams his wife's name to alert her of the danger right behind her. Hergens then turns her head before swinging her blade and slashing at the enemy. She apologizes to Sean for the lack of focus and mentions how this was due to making eye contact with Sir Cullens. Sean tells her no and mentions how he must stay by her side to protect her. Hergenes tells him he does not need to, as the pair fight off a horde of bandits. Sean says what? To which Hergenes tells him it really wasn't that dangerous just now. Xuan then asks if this is why Herge was smiling at Sir Cullens just now then and how she had time for it. She questions what he means before asking if he is jealous. Sean then tells her of course he would be, as his wife was smiling at another man on the battlefield. Herg then argues that it was due to her feeling awkward, as Sean then tells her to not do it still. She says what in response as we see the pair ripping through the enemy despite having a mid-battle argument. She then asks why he is being so childish, to which he then snatches onto one of her wrists. He stands before her firmly as he then tells her that he could be a lot more childish if he wanted. She blushes as she loudly asks, "More childish than this?" He then pulls onto her arm as we then see the pair striking at the enemies, who charged at them from both angles. Sean, still holding her wrist, says he could show her if she wants. She is speechless, as we then see four gray figures looking very nervous. The bandit leader watches as his men start to question if they should even keep fighting, as they are scared of this mad couple. The bandit leader has had enough as he asks what the fools are doing. He tells them to go kill the wench as she is the landlord of this place. This comment seems to anger Sean, as Herg calls the bandit leader a non-monetizable word for that statement. Herg then notices Sean lean forward and go ahead of her. As he marches forward, we can see that he is clenching upon his sword with great force. All the bandits, including the leader, seemed stunned by Sean. He starts to ask, what did that guy just call his wife? Sean moves his sword up as he calls this ridiculous. We then see a purple barrage of sword strikes as all the bandits go flying and screaming in pain. Hergain seems confused at the scene in front of her, as we then see a top view of the mass group of bandits, all laying on the floor unconscious. Two bandits then approach, as they call for their captain, who looks like a big smashed tomato. As Sean and his wife start to walk away, Hergenes notes to herself that this is why Sean always breaks his swords. Ivana then arrives and hands Herge the sword case, to which Herge thanks her. The red-haired guy says wow as he mentions how he saw that all unfold on their way here. He then leans over to Hergenes and asks in a silent voice if Hergenes really has to keep that devil as her husband. Hergenes is speechless to this question, before we then see a flurry of purple sword attacks in the distance. She then tells her underling yeah. The red-haired guy then says that Hergenes should get divorced then. He continues to tell her to get a divorce as the Herge has a lot to do anyways, but a hand is moving towards his face. Hergenes looks around as she covers his mouth. Hergenes is silent as Sean continues to go sicko mode on all the other bandits. She then tells her underling that if she were to get a divorce, does he know what would happen? The two then are silent and stare forward. They both stand speechless as Sean continues to rain hell on the enemy. They both then break into a sweat of nervousness. The day passes by as we later see the sunset near a house. Hergenes is there thinking about how it was dark in the forest and how they fought separately so there's no way they could have seen her. She then recalls that applies for everyone except Cullens though. Later we see her and Sean greeted by Damus, who thanks the pair for taking out the bandits. Damus then asks the pair why they are leaving right away though. Sean tells him that they need to head to the capital now, as there is an urgent matter. He then tells the people to make sure and continue working on the development of Himov. Damus yells yes sir to this, as Hergenes herself thinks about how she'd actually want to stay and rest for a bit, as they were unable to get any sleep. Damus is in tears as he wishes the pair a safe trip and to come back soon. This irks Sean, who tells him that they are leaving now. Later we see Hergenes board a horse before she leans her head to the side, noting how she can feel Reeve staring at her right now. She then tells Sean to hold on. Later, the pair can be seen in the forest as Sean stands pondering about something. He then tells Herganes to not worry, as he will take care of this, to which Herg asks him how. The three continue to travel by horse as Herganes then turns to have a glance at Reeve. She seems stunned as we see Reeve try to avoid any eye contact. She wonders to herself how he managed to do that as we later hear someone welcoming the people to a house. Herganes stretches her hand in the room, noting how she should first freshen up first. Sean stands behind her, looking like he's ready to have demon time. She turns to tell Sean to let her wash her hands first, but Sean's coat is already falling off. Herganes is stunned and blushes as we see Sean once again flaunt his abs. He asks her if she means right now, as Herg then turns her face in embarrassment, wondering what is wrong with her, as she's seen this sight plenty of times. Sean then grabs her shoulder as he starts to speak. He asks if they should wash up together then. Herganes thinks of the word together, as she then shoves him away, asking what the maids will think about this. She calls this ridiculous, as Sean then says to not worry, as no one will be allowed near the bathroom. She tells him that's not the issue, as he then starts to pout. She then lets out a little shout, as Sean grasps her. He carries her in the air, as he tells her it is just a bath, and there's nothing really complicated about it. Herganes notes to herself the issue is because she already knows this will not be just a normal bath. The pair sit in the tub as bubbles fill the air. Herganes blushes as she notes how they have this big tub. So do they really have to sit like this? Sean then holds her head, as he asks if she wants him to help her wash up, as she may be tired. She gives him a lit shove as she tells him it is okay and that she can do it herself. She then seems to notice something as she stares to rub her hands on his chest. She notes how it used to be clean before, but now she can feel scars. She wonders if they are from the scars of him almost dying. She then thinks about how one of them was from when she saved him. Sean then startles her as he grabs the hand she placed on him. A lot of movement then occurs as we hear large splashes and Sean asking Herg where in the world she thinks she is going. He hugs her in the middle of the water. She stands silent and blushing at this before he then starts to nibble on an ear. He then gives her a kiss near her temples before the pair stare face to face with one another's blushing face. Sean then tells her that she really does not wish to kick him out of here. Herg looks back as she notes how she truly does not hate this. She then wonders why though, as the pair then kiss. As they do so, Herg then wonders why it feels so weird. She recalls how she is so used to fighting battles against even 10 men, but that for some reason she is always nervous whenever she kisses this one man. She personally believes that she'd probably do better fighting with a sword and her eyes closed. Roses are littered all over the water around them as Herg then starts to grab his back. As the pair continue to lock lips, we see Sean then clench at Herg, bringing her closer to him. Herg is startled as she then tells him to hold on and then asks if they are going to do it. Sean asks if she means that, to which Herg yells that he knows what she means. Water spills out of the tub as Sean acts like he finally gets what she means. Sean then tells her he was already thinking of that before asking her if she does not want to or something. She nervously tells him no, and that's not what she means. She then tells him that she was thinking about how they have been doing it too much. Narrator interjection, but there's too much talking right now and not enough action. Sean seems stunned by her statement before yelling the words, too much, in disbelief. Herg then leans over, asking him how much is too much in his eyes. He blushes and sits in silence as she gets confused about his actions. He then holds up his hands, saying 3 times a day, which causes her to wonder if this guy is insane. He then holds her face as he tells her then at least once a day. Herg then wonders to herself if people really do it that much, and if everyone is like this. She notes how of course it's nice, but that once day is kind of much. This causes her to blush and cover her face at the thought of this. She is completely flushed as the thoughts running through her head cause her to overheat. He then decides on doing it once a week then for their future child. This also causes Herg to wonder what is wrong with him. She thinks about how it's like he's never avoided women before, and how this is too much. Or possibly things are usually really like this. Sean smiles as he thinks about how interesting this is. He then leans over on her as he says that he guesses it depends on how much she really loves them. He then gives her a kiss. The tongue then gets involved in this. We hear some splashes as Herg's hands then grab at the surface. He nibbles on the shoulder before she then calls his name. This then leads him to nibble the back as he calls her name. Her hand trembles on the surface before then slipping off as she says, oops. The pair then have another kiss in the water before Herge then puts her hand on his mouth and tells him to wait. He gives it a lick as he asks her why, to which she tells him he knows why. She then tells him to stop it, before then calling him a beast as he moves forward. He then tells Herge just one more time. Her heart beats loudly as she wonders why. She wonders why she grows so weak when she sees those eyes. Later we see them together, near a red blanket. She tells him fine as they kiss. His hands start to reach as she then slaps him, saying to stop touching her as she's already told him twice. He tells her fine as he gives her a peck. He then tells her they should do some talking then, as he mentions how they really don't get to talk much. Herge then asks him if they will be telling the palace about him off, to which Sean says not to mention any work stuff right now. She then asks him what they should talk about then as he lays in silence. He stares at her for a moment before asking if there is something she wants. She is speechless at this statement before saying that she does not. This seems to irk Sean, who then tells her to think about it and that anything is okay. Herge then wonders if this is what one would call a genie for a husband. She wonders if he is being for real, as she notes how his eyes do make it seem like he'd be willing to do anything. She then mentions how right now he looks as though he'd be willing to give her the Valois Skin Empire if she wanted it. He smiles at this, which puzzles her. He says only if she wants, which causes her to be shocked. He puts his hand down, as he asks if they will need to start a revolt then. Hergenes makes a comedic face at this proclamation and continues to lay speechless. She thinks to herself that Sean must be playing around right now, and how what he said must have been a joke. She then notes his eyes that tell a different story though, and how strong this atmosphere is. She then ponders to herself about how the second she moves, then the House of Targail might rebel. She wonders if she is supposed to be thanking him right now, or if she is supposed to scold him. She then stops all of these thoughts as she realizes that the first thing she must do is to think of something that she'd want. She then lays sweating and starts to ponder to herself. She then tells him that the Valois Empire is actually quite boring. The thought of flowers crosses her, as she then tells Sean she'd actually want a bouquet of flowers. He seems bewildered by her choosing flowers before he cutely then asks her what kind of flowers she would like. She continues to be nervous, as this really was just an impulse thought that blurted out. She then points at him and mentions how she's fine with any kind of flower that he'd be willing to give to her. This causes him to get lost, thinking about what to give, which makes Hergens then start to giggle as she notes how cute he looks when he's in thought. The night passes on as the moon sparkles a dim light into the window. Sean stands up over a sleeping Hergenes as he tugs on clothing. He puts on his black vest as he turns to look at his sleeping wife. He then leans over and kisses her goodnight before we see the door to a room creak open. Outside we see a butler bow to Sean and say he's been waiting for his grace. Sean calls Marlowe a great butler as the man thanks Count Kyroxus while handing the Count a piece of paper. Sean looks through the papers that lay on his desk as the butler then calls to his grace. The butler starts to speak about Countess Targail before Sean abruptly turns his head and tells the butler to continue. The butler clears his throat before mentioning that the Countess is not spending enough money. He mentions to Sean how her Genesis barely even uses the money that is given to her even to buy clothing. He tells Sean that she doesn't even go to any parties and seems to have no need for luxuries. The butler then asks if Sean thinks he'd need to have a look at this, to which Sean holds the paper, staring at it silently. Sean then seems to get angry as he recalls her telling him that all she wanted was a bouquet of flowers. He then thinks back to that diamond necklace that the prince sent, and how Hergenes is yet to even wear it once. He then thinks about how he cannot let his own gifts ever end up the same way as Raymond's did. The sudden fire emanating from Sean seems to startle the butler. Sean then crumples the paper as he mentions the word flowers. He then speaks up, mentioning how she did not tell him what kind of flowers she wants. Sean then calls the butler's name all of a sudden, causing the butler to nervously respond. He points at the butler and tells him to listen carefully. He wants Marlowe to prepare everything exactly as Sean says. The butler agrees and says yes to this, as Sean then says that there is a letter from the palace that he needs the butler to hand over. The butler agrees, but mentions how it was not for his grace. It was actually addressed to the Countess Hergenes. The morning comes to the estate, as we then see Ivana in a fancy outfit standing silently. Ivana tells Hergenes that the head maid Rosalie has been on long leave of absence due to the faking getting taken away. So in this time, Ivana will be the one to assist Madame Hergenes. Hergenes says she sees while internally thinking of how awkward this is. As the two step out, Ivana tells Hergenes that the outfit today is both cool and elegant, and asks if Hergenes likes it. Hergenes nervously says she does like it, while internally noting how much Ivana seems to enjoy all of this. We later see the butler then greet Hergenes with a bow and call her Grace. He then, with both hands, passes her a letter, saying that there is one thing she must check first. Hergenes holds up the letter as she reads the ceremony of the queen. In the letter, it addressed Hergenes Targail and talks about how the Queen of Ryo will soon be visiting the kingdom. It mentions how the ceremony for the queen will have many noble women attending and will be led by the Crown Princess Ayelin herself. It is said that Lady Cecilia Aperian of the Aperian courtship and Countess Hergenes will be preparing the ceremony together. The letter is from Prince Raymond, who thanks Hergenes and wishes her good luck. As she closes her eyes, Hergenes then wonders why. She thinks about how the House of Epernon have been in touch with the Ryo Kingdom, and how they know both the language and culture of Ryo, also that Crown Princess is a royal. Hergenes then notes how all she personally knows about the Ryo Kingdom is fine china and green tea. She mentions how she's not even close with the princess as well. The butler then tells Hergenes that the princess has invited her to a luncheon. Hergen says she guesses Lady Cecilia will be there as well, then to which the butler says he is sure so. This causes a gloomy atmosphere as Hergenes then says that she is sure this will be a pleasant luncheon. The day would pass as we later see the butler talking with some men outside of the carriage. He tells the two horsemen to please take care of things. Someone from behind then calls for the butler, as we see Reeve rushing over. He shakes the butler as he asks if he is busy. The butler shakes his glasses back in place as he tells Reeve he thinks just got busy now. Thanks to Reeve. Reeve then starts to speak and mentions Countess Hergenes. He starts to ask Marlowe if he knew that Count Hergenes is actually Eliza Herge. The butler puts his glasses back in place before asking if that is true. He recalls everyone already suspecting that, as Reeve starts to speak. He then trembles as he says he saw it. This stuns the butler as Reeve then thinks back to the blue swirl of sword strikes, while saying he says the Countess was whipping two swords around in the air. The butler is speechless, as Reeve then says the butler does not believe this right. Reeve then says he thought he was seeing things too. However, Count Kyroxis. A flashback then plays when Sean asked Reeve why he kept staring at Herjansen. Reeve then tells him that he saw Hergenes attack the bandits with her sword, and how he could not believe it. Sean then tells Reeve that he saw something wrong. Reeve seems to stare in confusion at Sean, before Sean then asks if Reeve understands. He then says that Reeve did not see anything. The butler is surprised the Count said that, as Reeve shivers and mentions how scared he was. The butler then says no wonder Sir Kyroxis is now asking him to prepare flowers for the Countess. This causes Reeve to jolt, as he mentions how that is such a romantic command from Sir Kyroxis. The butler then says Sean's feelings for her are legit, as the two now have a serious stance. We later see Herge stretching as she seems to be waking up from bed. She looks to her empty side as she wonders if Sean will be late today as well. She then punches the pillow as she thinks about how he's the one that is always busy, which makes her kind of mad. The pillow is beat up, as an annoyed Hergenes sits in silence. A bell is then ringed before someone then walks into the door of the room. Herge is stunned as the figure approaches closer to her. She notes that it is Sean, as Hergenes then wonders where her maids are and how she just broke his pillow. Sean has a smile on his face before he then leans over. She asks what he is doing here, and what about work, as her face is then covered with the sight of bright red roses all filled gorgeously into a bouquet. She reaches her hands out in joy as she says wow at the sight of flowers. As she holds onto them, she mentions how she's never received flowers like this. Sean looks over at her happily before he then taps on his lips demanding a kiss. She giggles, but the pair then share a kiss. Sean then abruptly tells her that he must go now, to which Hergenes then asks if he was waiting for her. He tells her no, and mentions how there are more gifts that she needs to open before the luncheon. The door is then closed with a click, as she then continues to sit and grasp at the bouquet of flowers. She then giggles and blushes while looking over the flowers, as someone then calls to her grace. We then see an army of maids telling her that Count Targail has sent her all these as well. She is stunned by the sight of this, as she then yells, "Huh," which can be heard throughout the estate. At a different palace-like building, we see a lady with darker hair welcome Countess Targail. Hergenes tells Her Highness hello, as the pair then continue to sit together awkwardly. Hergenes notes how quiet this is as the princess looks up silently. She squirms her hands on her dress as she calls for the Countess. She asks if Hergenes is happy. Surprising our female lead, she starts to think about the question as she sits quietly. She recalls how the Crown Princess and herself are actually very alike in many ways. Hergenes was sold off to the hero Sean Kyroxis to save the House of Targail, while Ayalin Seraph was given to the Valois royal palace for the glory of the House Seraph. The marriage of both households also turned into a hot topic of gossip for everybody. Everything revolving about these marriages were topics to gossip about in high society. In comparison with the princess, though, Hergenes clasps her hands together as she thinks about how happy she is with her own personal situation right now. Hergenes looks up at the princess as she wonders if she can tell her about that. The princess then speaks up, saying that was nonsense she was saying, and to please forgive her. The princess smiles as she asks to be excused, as she was just trying to feel more comfortable. Hergenes is silent before she then calls for Her Highness. She then tells the princess that she does not need to be that perfect. She tells the princess that she does not need to force herself to be happy for other people. The pair then continue to sit in silence again, as Hergenes then covers her mouth and notes internally how that all came out unintentionally. She notes to herself how there is nothing more foolish in society than honesty, as the princess remains silent. The princess then clenches her hands together as she starts to speak and says that she has never heard that being said from anyone before. She is slightly blushing and smiling, which causes Hergines to look back stunned. Hergines then tries to continue speaking with the princess, but the pair are interrupted by the announcement of Lady Cecilia's arrival. The two turn their heads to the side as we see a red dress walking closer to them. The lady who arrives has a black dress while carrying a red cloth for some reason. She has a smile on her face as it is clear that her eyes are dead set on Hergines. She stands over our female lead as she internally notes how Hergines likely has no clue as to why she was called her. The witch in her mind thinks about how dare Hergines steal her man and mentions how Sean was supposed to be with her. She has a dark and evil look on her face as she internally thinks about how, if she'd had known Sean needed a title, then she'd have married him right away already. She then clenches her fist and trembles as she thinks about how she'll torment Hergines so much that she regrets ever marrying Sean. She recalls back to a maid mentioning how Hergines does not wear fancy dresses as she thinks of how she'll take Hergines' shabby dress and laugh at it all she wants. She has a smile on her crusty face as Hergines' feet can be seen standing up. The witch Cecilia gets nervous as Hergines can be seen shining and standing before her. She seems to be stunned as she covers her eyes from the radiation and notes how that dress is actually a new one that recently was put on display. She recalls thinking this dress was not even for sale either. Cecilia then tells Her Highness that she is very late, which confuses the other two girls. Her Highness then tells Cecilia no, and that it's just that everyone else arrived early. As the three sit, Cecilia continues to think about how what Hergines wears is not important. She also wonders how she got the dress though, and thinks about how Hergines is still a country bumpkin. Cecilia then opens her mouth and asks if the pair talked about something before she got here, while internally being sure it was something boring anyways. The princess holds her hand to her face, blushing as she says it was nothing real. The princess then blushes even more as she says it was actually so fun that they did not notice time passing. This stuns Cecilia as she turns her head looking at Princess Yahello. She is so surprised to see the princess smiling like this and thinks about how there is no way. She recalls that the princess was always so sad and depressed before wondering what in the world the two were talking about before. She turns to a confused Hergines while full of rage. Cecilia then calls for Her Highness again, as she then speaks about how she heard Countess Targale has traveled abroad to many nations. She mentions how she recommended the Countess due to thinking the Countess might know the language and culture of Rio. She mentions how it sounded interesting and asks if they should let Hergines talk about it. Herg has an annoyed expression as she notes here, this witch goes again. The princess then is ecstatic to hear Hergines has traveled abroad and calls it wonderful. Cecilia seems pleased with this as Hergines is more annoyed. Cecilia has a smug smile and giggles before her face is filled with pure shock. She sees an angry Hergines that radiates the same energy as a ferocious big cat. This intimidation causes Cecilia to squeal in fear as the princess has no clue what is happening. Cecilia thinks about how when their eyes met, her chest got tight and she felt chills. Hergines then calls Lady Cecilia before asking if she is really sure she'd like to hear Hergines' story. Cecilia, who sits trembling and shuddering as Hergines looks over, a smile crosses our female lead's face. As Cecilia wonders why she is getting chill, internally, Hergines thinks about how Cecilia is likely the reason why she got summoned today, and how Cecilia can't even stand Hergines yet still tries to annoy her. Hergines then speaks up again, saying her story really isn't that fun anyways, and that she's sure it would have just ruined the atmosphere. Hergines then speaks about how her parents both passed when she was still young, and that she was left alone with her younger brother. She continues to speak to the startled other two, as Hergines mentions how she had nothing left to lose, so she had to do everything in her power to protect the only family she had left. This was the reason why Hergines went abroad to sell things, and there were also many different other things that happened along the way. Cecilia then holds her neck as she gasps, as Hergines then starts to yell. Hergines slams the table, as she tells them that despite this, she did not do anything to ruin her brother and her family's reputation and honor. With this statement, Cecilia seems to get struck as she starts to yell. The princess calls to the lady wondering what is wrong, as Cecilia then apologizes to Her Highness as she has no clue as to why she is struggling right now. The princess tells Cecilia that it may be best to just go get some rest for now. Cecilia covers her face and apologizes as the maids usher her away. Later we can see the original two attendees sitting together still at the table. The princess then mentions how Lady Cecilia has been so uncourteous and asks for Hergines to be understanding. Hergines says no and calls it her own fault. The princess then laughs and covers her face as she mentions how glad she is Hergines told Cecilia off like that. She also mentions how she has not liked the way Cecilia acts for the longest time. Hergines asks if that really is true, before asking what else that witch has done. The princess starts to speak again, as all we can see is that the pair had a good laugh about it off screen. Later, we see the two walking down some stairs with a group of maids behind them. They hold hands as the princess tells Hergines to please come over again, as this is the most fun she has had in ages and is very sad to see her go. Hergines tells Her Highness, of course. As Hergines stands watching the princess and the maids head back into the castle, she then turns to see a man walking by right in front of her. She notes how he looks like a noble, so she should probably bow just in case. The man then seems to step right in front of Hergines to her surprise. She looks up to see a long-haired individual who is wearing a monocle. She stares at him with her hand still on her chest, as the guy then smiles and mentions how it's such a great day for a walk. He then calls her my lady. Her eyes then sparkle as she seems to realize who this is. She notes to herself that this must be the Duke Enoch's seraph. She starts to sweat as she then remembers hearing that this man is Ayelin's brother and thinks about how different they both are. She then thinks about how weird it is, the way that he is staring at her right now. He speaks up saying wow as he tells her that her eyes are perfectly blue and that they are the most beautiful and royal shade of blue he has ever seen. His hand then reaches out for her face as she flinches. She seems to do a super step back like James Harden as she wonders what the heck is wrong with this crazy guy. He then bows down to her as he tells her his name is Duke Enoch from the House Seraph. He then requests for her to say her name if it isn't too much to ask. He continues to nod as she stands speechless. Her eyes then dull as she thinks about how it is just a name anyway. She tells him she is Countess Hergines Targiel. He stands stunned at this as she then asks if she's actually Hergines. He is speechless as she seems surprised by his reaction. He then reaches his hand out again as he asks if he may have a talk with her for a moment. She looks at him with contempt as she notes how he surely is up to something right now. She then bows, calling it an honor as he stands up, having gotten left hanging. The pair then can be seen walking under some very green trees. He then says he had no clue that the Countess from House Targael would be so beautiful. She thanks him for the compliment as she notes how he keeps doing this rather than getting to the point. He then speaks about how he's seen many ladies in his day, but none as beautiful as her. Hergines then wonders if she really is that pretty though. The Duke then tells her that the color of blue represents House Seraph. Hergines tells him she did hear about that, to which he tells her that is why he sees great beauty in perfect shades of blue. Hergines starts to get more nervous as she silently thinks about how this dude is not normal and how she'd better run away. She then turns her feet as she tells him she'd better get going now, but he tells her to wait. She turns her head as he tells her to wait for him. He tells her to excuse him, but he would like to touch her face. As he reaches to do so, she notes how he's for sure crazy and that he's an idiot who has lost his mind. She then recalls how this guy wears gloves for his OCD. She wonders what he is doing now and if it would be rude to turn away. She covers her eyes as she does not know anymore. But someone then shouts her name. She and the Duke turn as she says Sean. The guy's hand then touches her face. This startles the main couple, as we then see the Duke have an evil look on his face. Hergines feels her face as Sean then yells the name Seraph. Sean hugs onto Hergines as the Duke stands before them with his hand up. The Duke has a smirk as he calls to Count Targael. Sean coldly responds to the Duke's Seraph. His eyes glare at the guy as he internally thinks about how this clean freak has touched her with his bare hands. Sean then grasps onto his wife more tightly as the Duke then asks what is wrong. He mentions how he just ran into her and that they were just talking. Sean questions that ran into each other part as the Duke then gives off a smile. He then mentions how Sean is acting like they had an affair, which causes our male lead to clearly get irked off. Sean then speaks up and mentions how the Duke is acting he has his eyes on another man's lady. The Duke calls this all interesting as he then raises both of his hands, saying that Sean has never been with a lady as interesting as this. He calls it very fascinating as Sean then stares back at the guy speechless. The Duke then turns with his coat flapping as he says it was very nice meeting her to Countess Targael. As Sean angrily holds on to his wife, the Duke says he hopes that they can run into each other again some other time. As the man walks off into the distance, Hergines then starts to growl and get infuriated at the guy. She calls him a low-down snake that if he wasn't the Duke then she'd have loved to punch him already. Sean then twirls her around and calls her name. He asks if she is alright and then tells her that he came here as soon as he could. Hergines then tries to reassure him and tells him that she is alright and that he knows nothing happened. She then talks about how the Duke Seraph mentioned how he liked her blue eyes and tried to touch her face. Internally she notes that this is pretty disturbing, but that it honestly was not such a big deal. She then calls Sean's name as he is currently trembling in silence. He then screams asking how could. He asks How could she be so calm when something like that had just happened? Hergin seems alarmed as she says Sean's name. Sean then continues to tell her that she has no clue how crazy of a maniac that guy is. He tells her it is obvious that she has fallen for this creep's trap. Herge tries to tell him to calm down, but he continues to yell about how there was no telling what kind of thoughts that creep had about her. She again tries to calm him down, but he mentions how he's about to lose his mind. He asks her how she could think this was nothing, as her genies is now kinding, getting annoyed at Sean's overreaction. A large pow can be heard as we then see Sean say ow as he holds onto his stomach. Her genies has her fist clenched and filled with malicious energy. She then tells him to shut it with a smile and tells him to listen to her. She tells him that she is sorry for the punch, but that she will not stay still if he keeps refusing to listen to her. She then speaks about how she also did not like the Duke touching her, so Sean does not need to worry as she was being cautious. Sean then mentions how he was only trying to make sure she was all right, and asks why she got so worked up about it. Hergin then lightly punches him again, as she reminds him she is Herge of Elazar, so she could have killed that guy if she wanted. She asks if he understands now, to which he then says sorry, and that he could not stand the fact that the Duke laid eyes on her. Herginas then laughs and switches the subject by asking Sean how she looks. She strikes a pose for him, as she mentions how she is wearing the dress that he gave her. Sean smiles at this as he tells her she is so pretty. She smiles back at him for the compliment before Sean then leans over and hugs her. He makes sure to squeeze tightly as her guineas then starts to pat him on the back and ask if he is okay. Sean then does his lick move, which startles her and causes her to have a light yell. She says come on, basically telling him not here, but he continues. Sean then mentions how he also sent her undergarments and asks if she put them on. She yells asking if she can even tell him that, to which he takes this as a yes to his question. Sean then carries her up in his arms as he asks if he should go check for himself. As Herc stares, she calls his name, which gets him to wonder what she has to say. She then ruins his spicy mood as she mentions how Lady Seclia came to brunch today. She then mentions how Cecilia was getting on Hergin's nerves, and she wonders why. Sean is sweating and dead silent at this, as Hergin's feet then hit the floor. She tells him not today, and if he understands, as he continues to stand dead silent. She then grabs his hand as she tells them that they should go now. She then starts to run off as Sean follows right behind. Sean is still pouting at this as Hergini starts to giggle and note how cute this is. Later we see the palace door. The princess sits nervous as we then see someone mixing up their cup of tea. The princess stares as she then calls to Enox. He calls her the princess as he then starts to speak about Countess Targale. He then tells the princess that the countess has beautiful eyes. The princess then speaks up, yelling, pleading him not Lady Targale, and that he should not mess with her. Her hands shake as she tells him the countess is her friend. The Duke questions the friend statement as he asks Her Highness if she recently has had any more nightmares. She seems alarmed by this statement before she then moves her hand up and starts shuddering. She continues to tremble as her brother continues to smile in front of her. He tells her not to worry, as he himself also thinks very highly of the countess. He then tells her that she just has to keep listening to him, as she has already been doing. She continues to tremble before him, as we clearly see he is manipulating her. The board game looks like Jumanji, by the way. A building with a red roof can be seen as Hergana says it has been a while. We see her standing inside with a hat, as her men behind her stare at other weapons. The swordsmith asks her how well the sword swings nowadays, before mentioning how it appears as though she got some blood on it. She tells him it did great, before saying she is here today to order a stiletto, and would like to get some swords for the guys behind her. The man tells her all right. She then mentions the length of the swords before someone then calls for Master Harvin. A guy walks into the shop asking if his own swords are ready. He stands over Harvin, as Harvin tells him it's not ready yet. Herganes wonders if this is a knight in training, as the knight asks, how come it's not done yet? Master Harvin then tells the guy whose name is Kattinson that there is no way he can handle a rapier and main gauche. This catches the attention of our main lead. The shop owner tells the guy he suggests using a rough shield and a rapier instead. Kattinson throws a fit, as he says he does not want that and would specifically like to use the rapier and main gauche combo like Herge. The shop owner seems tired of this, as he mentions how it's not like he won't make it for the guy. Herge smiles at the scene before her, as she internally notes how the Master Harvin will not make it for someone if they do not have the talent. She then notes how the master can probably just tell by looking at someone. Master Harvin then yells, saying if the knight can handle that combo, as well as the lady over there, then he'll make it. The knight turns wide-eyed to Herganes, as she then holds her hat up startled. Kattinson then questions that this is a lady, though, to which the master says yes she is. The knight then asks if the master is taunting him right now, just because he does not wish to make him one. This angers Master Harvin, who then asks the kid if it looks like he's messing around right now. He then again says that he will not make him one unless he gets better than that lady. Hergenes looks to the side as she nervously scratches at her face. She wonders what is wrong with this palace and why all the crazy situations seem to pop up when she comes here. Harvin is grinning at her before he then raises his finger, saying he'll make her the stiletto for free. She then tells him she'd like that as well as a two-handed sword. Later outside we see her and the knight from before stand across from one another. He tells her that he is Catenson of Robol. He mentions how he may not be from the house of Targail, but that his viscounty has produced many swordsmen, and that he will be applying for royal knighthood. He then asks for her name, to which she apologizes and tells him not now. He then tells her she should take off her hat, as she may not be able to see, to which she says it does not matter. He then starts to charge as he tells her to not regret this. He launches a big swing as Hergenes seems to easily walk away from it. She then smacks his hand with her wooden sword as she tells him to loosen up a bit, so he can move his sword more easily. She then moves behind him to hit the other hand, as she tells him to put more weight on his right foot and to prepare his left hand for anything. The dust is all over the place as she has moved in front of him. He then proceeds to throw a bunch of haymaker sword swings at her as we can see her not even looking as she blocks all of the attacks. She then stops the movement of his sword with one move, before unleashing her own barrage of attacks at him, which sends him flying. His swords both hit the floor as he is then laying on his back with a sword to his neck. She stands coldly over him as he trembles and mentions how he lost. He is then told to keep his promise as a crowd of people enjoyed the show and call this a great lesson. As Hergenes walks away, the knight yells to her. He then thanks her for teaching him, to which Hergenes then tells him to listen to Master Harvin from now on. She mentions that he may be rude, but he knows a thing or two. She continues to walk as the master then mocks the knight. Catenson then again asks for her name, which angers Master Harvin. The knight says he would like to repay her grace, to which Master Harvin then tells the kid to just think of this as a midsummer's dream. He tells him to think of a sword he would like and to come back next time. The sun continues to set as we later see someone yell that the millennium is coming and the end times are near. He continues to talk about the end times as the knight turns his head to look back. In the busy night street, he wonders who that girl was. It is nighttime now, as we see a white building in the moonlight. We see a woman walking up to someone who stands before a statue. The queen tells Illwoods that it has been so long. The guy turns his blindfolded face as he tells the queen, welcome. The two then have a seat on the stairway as the queen mentions how she heard Illwoods has found someone. She speaks about Valoir's Count Targail. He is the hero from the 100-year battle. The queen says she had no idea before asking about the one. Illwoods says not yet before saying he has a few people in mind. He mentions that the Duke Seraph has angel blood, so he is looking into that guy. The queen asks if he believes in that fairy tale, to which Illwoods mentions how he does need something to rely on after all. The queen then looks over as we see Illwoods say to hold on as he starts to remove the blindfold. He drops it to the floor next to him. He then calls Hyun as he asks for a favor from her. He has some angelic colorful eyes and long white hair. His eyes gaze at her as he then reaches his hand out to the queen. His hand causes a sort of spell of something in front of her. He tells the queen that if she comes into contact with the Duke, then she'll know if he's the one. He tells her that there is only one chance though, to which the queen asks, what if the Duke is not it? Illwoods puts back on his folds as he says he'll have to keep looking then. He tells her there may be a little time left, but that's still something. Bro is trying too hard to be Gojo from that one anime, by the way. Lol. Someone lowers their hood as they say wow to the madam. Hergenes responds by happily saying it is Epin. The two greet each other rosily as Epin asks if Hergenes has been well, to which Hergenes asks what took him so long to get home. Epin mentions how he and his people had to give their pursuers the slip, especially since they scrubbed all the evidence to ensure that nobody would know that the bandits came from the House Targail. Hergenes notes how that is true, before Hergenes then mentions how it seems like she never told Sean about Kalia. Sean nods in response. Hergenes then proceeds to tell Sean the whole truth, as he then is left stunned. As he ponders about the assassination attempt, Sean angrily mentions how dare those guys, which leaves Epin in fear and causes Hergenes to try and calm Sean down, saying it is all water under the bridge. Hergenes points as she mentions the important thing is to keep the identity of the person who requested the assassination away from Kalia. Hergenes mentions it turns out to be Duke Seraph, which further irks Sean, who says nani. Sean then says he knew he should have killed the Duke that day, as Hergenes gives him a nudge to calm down again. Hergenes tells Sean he can't do that, to which Epin nods in agreement, calling it reckless. Hergenes then says that guy must be taken out in silence, as she does the cutthroat gesture. She calls getting one's hand dirty amateur work, as Eppin is left stunned at how cold-blooded the main couple are. Hergenes asks Sean if they should frame the guy and have him hanged. Other possibilities include taking off the head, flames, poison, and drowning. She wonders what the most painful method is and tells Sean to take his pick. Sean smiles at this as Eppin wonders if the two of them realize how powerful Duke Seraph is, and wonders if all of this is even allowed. Sean then tells Eppin fine, as Eppin says yes sir. Sean asks if Eppin has evidence it was Duke Seraph who hired him, to which Eppin then hesitates. He says there is not any, and he only found out by coincidence. Sean questions this as Eppin then says it might not be a coincidence, actually. The people probably let this info slip on purpose to ensure they would never betray Duke Seraph. Eppin then says that is why he is hiding here right now and would be dead if he left. Sean then gets annoyed as he realizes that perfectionist Duke really doesn't leave even a trace behind. Someone then dashes into the room calling to the Lord. The butler says they have gotten an important message from the palace. It is that the teleporter has been activated. This stuns the main couple, as it is mentioned how the teleporter only ever activates with Ilwood's holy power, so not just anyone can use it. At the present moment, the only people who even plan to use the teleporter is the delegation from the Ryo Kingdom. This can only mean it is the Queen of Ryo. We then see a large flash as the Queen and many of her subjects appear. The Queen smiles as she is now in Valoir. Hergenes stands in a crowd speechless. She wonders why everything feels so familiar, as we see two large groups come into proximity of one another. She mentions both the women and also even the men. She mentions how it feels as though she is watching a different period drama from her previous life. A man calls for Her Majesty and welcomes her to Valoir, as all the servants bow. The Queen thanks His Highness for the warm welcome. Cecilia calls the Queen an arrogant wench, as Hergenes turns her head alarmed. She wonders what Cecilia is planning now and notes how rude that was and how a comment like that should be kept to oneself. As she wonders if Seclia lost her mind, Queen Ryo seems to turn her head over to Hergenes, causing our female lead to be surprised. She wonders what is going on, as it is now clear that the Queen is staring right at her. Hergenes wonders how she should explain this, but that after seeing so many colorful eyes, the ones that gaze at her now appear very dark. Hergenes mentions how it feels as though she is meeting someone from her hometown. The sight of an Asian building and flowers appear as the Queen asks her James, what did she just see? This both confuses and alarms our female lead. The Queen walks by as if nothing happened, leaving a confused Hergenes looking onward. Hergenes thinks about what just now happened as the Queen gives her a side eye. Hergenes then wonders if that was just Korean she heard. Time would pass as we see a golden party go down, with musicians playing the flute. Some ladies talk about how they heard Sean and his wife were coming today, and how they finally get to see his wife, who they have heard so much about lately. They act like female dogs as they bark about how his wife has never attended a ball. They giggle as they wonder why, and someone replies that it is obvious. The door creaks upon as the dogs mutter out one last time, saying it's because the wife is probably hideous. The room all turns their eyes stunned, and murmurs amongst one another, as the step of a black dress shoe can be seen. It is Count Targail in his royal drip. It is not only him as a group of gray figures notes how there is someone else. It is the Countess in a beautiful purple plum-like dress. The pair look like a royal couple, as the lights shine upon them as they start walking forward. As they pass by, the people continue to murmur, as Hergenes then tightens her grip on Sean's arm and mentions to him how this is more uncomfortable than she had thought. Sean whispers, mentioning how he's never seen her this nervous, and how she's even more relaxed while in battle. Hergenes blushes at this comment, as she then grabs him again asking how he knew that, and tells him she has never gone to a ball this grand. Sean then tells her to not worry, as he grabs her back. He tells her she will get used to it soon, and also that she has him right by her side. She looks back at him with a smile, as all the ladies think about how they've never seen the cold Count smiling like this. The couple hold hands and share a large smile together. Sean then brings up the Queen's ceremony, as Hergenes questions what is wrong. He tells her to let him know if it's too much pressure for her, as he'll take care of it for her. She seems relieved at this comment before telling him not to worry. Sean seems to be confused, as Hergenes then gets deep into her thoughts about how she is absolutely sure that the Queen spoke Korean. Hergenes then speaks up, saying who knows, she might turn out to be quite the expert on the Ryo Kingdom. A group of desserts can be seen on the table as we hear people talk about how they did not know the Countess would be such a beauty. A crowd starts to surround Hergenes as they wonder if that dress she is wearing was from the Sofiana boutique, and then say that it looks so magnificent on her. Someone asks Hergenes to come to their tea party next month and say it would be an honor. Someone else interrupts, telling Hergenes to come to their party first. In her mind, Hergenes thinks about how she feels as though she's gotten a little more used to this treatment, and no thanks to the party. Someone seems to stare from afar, clearly angry at the attention Herganes is getting. They turn and nod at another girl who is carrying 2 cups. The girl with the 2 cups looks over nervously. Herganes can be seen still surrounded by a group of people as the girl with the 2 cups clenches harder on the drinks. They then rush into the scene and then yell oops as they pretend to accidentally spill the drinks onto our main character. The girl instead falls to the ground as our skilled mommy twirls around like a ballet dancer and completely dodges the splash attack. The glass cups hit the ground with a large splatter as the crowd gets stunned at the situation that just unfolded. Someone grabs hold of the falling girl. The girl still has her eyes covered to brace for impact with the ground. She opens them all of a sudden before she is then turned around in confusion and stares up at Herganes. Herganes holds her like a knight holds a damsel in distress as she asks if the girl is all right. The girl's heart beats rapidly as she nervously responds yes. Herganes says that was dangerous as the young girl says yes. The crowd hold their breaths as they murmur about the incident. The girl tells Herganes she is Fiora from House Sensia and apologizes to Herganes. Herganes smiles as she says it is all right and that it was just a mistake due to the slippery floor anyway. This causes the girl to majorly blush as Sean then arrives at the scene and yells his wife's name in concern. He grabs her as she asks what happened and to let him check. He asks if she is hurt, to which she mentions she is fine as he can clearly see. Sean is still riled up as she tells him he's acting as if she just got attacked or something. Sean is very angry as he mentions how it was something like that. He side-eyes the girls in the back as he mentions to himself how he cannot step into these catfights. Herganes then confidently asks who could even splash water on her, especially when she dodges swords on the daily. She asks if Sean remembers who he is talking to as he nervously mentions that is true. The water girl tries to sneakily dash away. She covers her eyes as she internally says she is very sorry and thanks Herganes for saving her. Her heart beats as the main couple notice her departure. Later we hear trumpets as the people yell, "It is His Highness Prince Raymond." He walks into the scene, waving at everyone, as someone else can be seen behind His Highness. The people let out a collective gasp as they mention it is His Grace Duke Seraph. He walks down the stairs to the excitement of the people who call him perfect as usual. Sean is very angry at the creep, and his dark energy fumes in the air as Herganes tells him to stop. The prince beams right to the count as Sean and Herganes bow to His Highness. The prince says it has been a while since he saw them at a ball, and the last time they met was during victory celebrations. The prince then mentions how Herganes must be the countess then. They finally meet in person as the prince tells Herganes her necklace suits her very well. Herganes internally voices her displeasure at the prince but decides she must act polite on the surface. She calls His Highness too kind. The creep duke then says Herganes is stunning today as well. This draws a shocked expression from the main couple as Duke Seraph arrives with his hand to his chest calling to the countess. The prince is surprised as he asks if the duke has already been acquainted with the countess. The duke mentions how he met her at the palace and that they exchanged greetings. The duke then says he also thought back then that she was a beautiful lady. The prince is confused as Sean then puts his hands over his wife's shoulder and calls to His Grace. Sean mentions how the duke seems to be very interested in his wife as the duke asks, so what if he is? The stare down causes the prince to stand speechless. He internally thinks about the situation before him. The prince mentions how he has been fascinated by Sean's reaction since Sean is normally very cold with the ladies. He also is fascinated by the duke since the duke normally would look at all women in disgust. This causes the prince to glance over at Herganes as he wonders, what about this woman has charmed both of them so much? His eyes continue to glare as he mentions how she is beautiful, but that the courtesan famous for her looks is more of a beauty. This girl also ran away when Sean rejected her advances, so this probably is not just about looks. The duke then turns to Herganes and calls her my lady. He reaches his hand out as he says he hopes she has been faring well. The hand offered to her has caused Sean to get very irked. Sean internally calls the guy a non-monetizable word. Sean thinks how dare this dude ask for his wife's hand to kiss right in front of him. A fire is lit up in Sean as he mentions he will definitely kill this guy. Herganes is calm and stares quietly at the hand. She internally says what, as she then wonders what is wrong with the two of these guys next to her. Herganes notes how this is not good and glances over to the side hoping the prince can help with the situation. The prince is actually amused at all this and is having so much fun watching the drama play out in front of him. Herganes then starts to lift her hand as she assumes she does not really have a choice. Sean is now even more fired up as he wonders if she'll really be giving him her hand. Herganes stares at Sean as she thinks about how she knows exactly what he is thinking, but that they both have to mind their manners here. Her hand gets closer to that of the duke's as he then grasps and holds it. Bro acts like a creep as he says wow, and notes how elegant this was. Hercules internally says ew and gross at the Duke. He then kneels down to kiss her hand, which causes goosebumps in her gans. She internally mentions how disgusting this is, even with gloves on. She then recalls how it felt so much better doing things with Sean though. That thought is erased immediately as the Duke continues to be weird as hell. The prince notes how this just keeps getting better, as Hercules wonders if the weirdo really just licked her hand. The Duke then says the lady is welcome to his estate if the opportunity ever presents itself. He then tightens his grip on her hand, as Hercules wonders why he will not let go, and how he's actually stronger than he looks. She wants him to let go already, as Sean's eyes have now turned red. Hercules internally notes how there will be a bloodbath soon if the Duke keeps doing this. Hercules then snatches her hand back, which causes the guy to blush. He speaks about how there are many things he wishes to show her. Hercules reacts to this comment before having a cartoon face. She internally questions what exactly he means before mentioning how this guy is so vile she does not really want to even imagine. Sean then steps in, telling the Duke that he thinks this is enough. The Duke questions the word enough, as Sean tells him he's quite the jealous type. Sean mentions how he's not quite sure he can hold back anymore. The Duke then questions what he did wrong, and mentions how he has not even tried anything yet. Sean mentions how the Duke said yet. Sean then grabs at his gloves more firmly as he mentions how he knows a way to keep the Duke's mouth silent. Herge wonders if Sean is gonna throw a glove. She then grabs her husband's arm as she wonders if he's crazy, as Sean seems to be challenging the Duke to a duel today of all days. She squeezes tighter on his arm as she recalls telling him not to make rash judgments. A loud sound can then be heard, as all the characters then turn their heads to the side. It is trumpets blaring, as it is announced that Her Majesty, the Queen Ryohun, has now arrived. The Queen and her group stand on a red carpet. She stands atop the stairs as the room before her falls into silence. The crowd around her whispers amongst themselves. They ask if that's the Queen and question why she looks like that. They mention how she's the Queen so she can probably do what she pleases. They also say the Queen likely has no man in her life, so that's why she let herself go like that. They then start to laugh about it as the Queen and her aide walk by. The aide calls these people impudent, as the Queen calls to Rasun. The Queen says the aide seems to lack discipline still, and tells the child to refrain herself. Rasun says yes to this as the Queen then glances around wondering where that woman was. The aide asks if she means Hercules. The Queen says it is a shame Hercules' husband is Sean. The aide tells the Queen to not think so favorably about Hercules yet, as they still need more info about the girl, to which the Queen says she was just about to go get more. Cecilia wonders what they are whispering about, and mentions how she heard Sean's name. The prince then walks over and welcomes Her Majesty, as Cecilia then translates. The Queen says thank you for the warm welcome, to which Cecilia translates again. This surprises Hercules. She mentions how it was just as she had thought and that the Ryo Kingdom speaks Korean. Hercules' heart pounds, as she finds this both odd and very interesting at the same time. The Queen then walks toward Hercules and asks for her name, to Cecilia's shock. Hercules understands that, but decides to stay silent so she does not get made into the interpreter. She wants Cecilia to keep having to do it. To everyone's shock, Cecilia then says that Her Majesty just said that the Countess is very impertinent. People start to mutter as many are now very confused. Cecilia, who is acting like a weasel, then says that there seems to be a misunderstanding and says she will try to smooth out the situation. The weasel tells the Queen that the Countess is very shy and got flustered so she could not answer the Queen's question. Hercules wonders if this weasel lost her mind. People start to chatter, wondering if the Countess is disrespecting the Queen right now, and wonder how she could behave like this on such an important occasion. They wonder about the diplomatic issues from this as the main couple start to look around. Sean then squeezes his wife's hand. Sean internally says buck diplomacy, and that if these people say another word about his wife, he won't let them get away with it. Hercules starts to feel Sean's concern as she then tightens her grip on his hand and internally tells him not to worry, as she is all right. She notes how this is a bit annoying, but that since it's come to this, she'll have to be the interpreter herself. Hercules then speaks in Korean and calls for Her Majesty. To the shock of the smooth brain weasel, Hercules smoothly tells the Queen that she is neither flustered nor shy. Hercules mentions how Cecilia has made a mistake before telling Her Majesty her name is Hercules Targil. She then bows, saying it is an honor to meet Her Majesty. This causes the crowd to have a shocked expression on all of their faces. The weasel is shocked to see Hercules can speak the Ryo language, as it is a hard language to learn. Some guy says damn it, as there are now other people who can speak the Ryo language, when he originally thought only his family could do so. The man recalls allowing his idiot daughter to say anything she wanted since he thought no one would know. He then realizes their house's reputation is on the line. The Queen herself is still stunned. She says she cannot believe someone from Valois could speak the language of Ryo so fluently, as Hercules tells Her Majesty she is being too kind. The queen asks if she can call her Herganes, to which our female lead says of course. The crowds then glare, as they now realize the little freaking weasel probably was interpreting the queen's words wrong on purpose. The prince then walks over and calls to the weasel as she shrieks at his presence. The prince asks if she is aware of how important this occasion is diplomatically. He asks if it could be that she was doing this on purpose. This causes the weasel's heart to drop. Side note, but this scene has motivated me to re-download Duolingo. A lot of whispers and murmurs go on as a group of people stand at the center of attention. People mutter about how the House Epernon was so proud of the fact that they could interpret the language of Ryo. They also chatter asking how could Lady Cecilia do something like this. Herganes then lifts her hand and calls to His Highness. She says that there must have been a slight miscommunication between the two languages. She tells the prince that everything is resolved and that there's no need to be concerned. The prince thinks about it before saying, if Herge says so, then fine. He does, however, wonder what the meaning of all this is, as Herganes is defending someone who tried to pull a trick on her. Herganes has a smirk on her face as she internally notes how she did not do that for Cecilia at all. It was not for the weasel's sake, but Princess Ayalin's. Herge stares at the princess before turning her head to glare at the weasel. She notes how this despicable woman should be thankful to the princess. The weasel now gets big mad as she grits her teeth and notes how dare Herganes humiliate her like this. The prince then says the weasel appears tired and tells his staff to escort the wild animal back to the drawing room. The maids oblige as they grab the filthy animal by both arms. The prince then tells Count Epernon that they will need to have a little chat. The count puts his head down in silence. The prince then says he would now like Herganes to be the queen's interpreter now for the remainder of the evening. Herganes says yes to this as Sean then grabs at his wife's shoulder. She places her hand on his as she then turns and tells him to not worry. Sean closes his eyes as he wishes they could go home already. Herganes then turns blue as she notes how he probably has so many things he'd like to ask her. The queen then lifts her arms as she then walks in and calls this country interesting and asks Herganes if that is her husband. Herganes questions how Her Majesty is speaking the official language, to which the queen laughs and says she never said she couldn't. Herganes recalls hearing the queen could only speak simple greetings as the queen now giggles, since this was supposed to be a secret. The queen then says it is true she is more comfortable with the Ryo language. Herganes says she sees as the queen says to keep this a secret, to which Herganes says of course. She then leans on our main character as she asks for Herganes to help her enjoy the ball. Herganes has a smile as she says yes to Her Majesty. As they walk around, so many people crowd them. Time would pass as we later see a full moon over the estate. Herge then lays down, mentioning how exhausted she is. Sean looks over her with abs open to public viewing. Sean is silent for a moment. He calls to Herge as she turns her eyes to him. He mentions how he had no clue she could speak the language of Ryo, to which Herganes says she knows, and that she was surprised as well. Sean tilts his head, asking how she was surprised. Herganes wonders how she is to explain this, as she cannot tell him she was from Korea in her past life. This also happened to be the same language as the Ryo kingdom. She nervously notes how no matter how she puts it, she'll look like a crazy person. She wonders how she should put it as Sean then gets silent. He mentions how he can see that she clearly has some secrets of her own. Herganes tells him she is sorry, to which Sean says it is fine. It's just that it feels as though she does not fully trust him. Herge is speechless to this as she then starts to think back to Sean's perspective. She recalls pretending to be a man in the battlefield, and that she kept her Herge identity from him until after they got married. She is silent before she reaches her hand out and touches his face. She calls him by name. He calls her Herge as she tells him she is sorry she can't tell him everything. She says that someday, when she has the courage, she will share all her secrets with him. The pair then have a kiss. She moves her head away as Sean then grabs her wrist. A swoosh can be seen in the air as Sean can then be seen near her neck. He calls her by Herge again as he asks if she knows something. He says that was the first time she was the one who kissed him first. She stares back at him, blushing as she then puts her hand near his neck. She then flips him over before they both stare at one another. She tells him this time she will try to take the lead then. She tells him he can just relax as he appears stunned. Herge gives him a kiss as Sean remains speechless at it. Herge asks him how it is, to which Sean looks back at her before telling her it's as if he is being tortured. He tells her he cannot stay still when she is like this. He mentions the names of the Duke Seraph and the Queen of Ryo as well. He mentions how it appears as though he has more love rivals now as the pair kiss. She calls his name before thinking to herself he must be jealous. She then starts to giggle at his confusion. She says sorry to him as she mentions how it's just that he's too cute. He then tells her he cannot hold back any longer. She pushes him and says to stop. She asks if he forgot their agreement and tells him this only happens when she wants to. He has a gulp as he then recalls the stupid contract and how he must find and burn it now. He starts to sweat as she gives him a smile. She then whispers to him to not worry, and she also wants to as well. He then tells her as she wishes, as we see the dark room with some red objects in it. He later can be seen asking if he is able to move now. They then stare at one another as he tells her he might be a little bit tough. He tells her he will not let go of her easily tonight. It is said that the night is long after all, as Hergines tells him he is unbelievable. The air is filled with hearts that float up into the sky out of the house. Later we see his hand placed atop her head. He looks over her with a warm smile as she has fallen asleep. He leans over to give her a kiss again, as we then see a desk full of papers. Sean calls to Marlowe as his butler says, "Yes, my lord." The butler then starts to speak about Count Epernon. He mentions how the prince will question this guy after the ceremonies, but that the House Epernon will continue to be in charge of the interpretations while the ceremonies take place. Sean then tells the butler to do some research on House Epernon and to bring back news that is more satisfying than this. The butler says to leave it to him, as he's even down to create a weakness if he has to. Sean asks who else will be at tomorrow's festivities, to which the butler says the prince and princess are not attending. The queen and her servants plan to partake though. The butler then starts to speak on something else to Sean's surprise. The butler says the Duke Seraph will be in attendance as well. Sean looks back sternly at his butler. It is mentioned that the last ceremony is a masquerade ball, where everyone can enjoy themselves without having to give up their identities. It will be held in the evening, and since everyone has a disguise, people tend to get carried away if the mood is just right. Sean thinks about how the germaphobe is participating in an event like this, and how the Duke also never attended any of the other important banquets. He then remembers how the Queen is attending this, so it will be impossible to skip it. Sean notes how he was already aware of the Duke's obsession with blue eyes, and how many women with blue eyes have gone missing due to his obsession. Sean used to let his guard down, since the Duke had never made a move on a noblewoman before. Now the Duke is not even trying to hide it, and it's so out of character. Sean then slams the wall as he mentions how if it turns out that this guy has fallen for Herg. The butler nervously calls for his lord, as Sean's punch causes dust to fly in the air. The butler tells Sean that the Duke's underlings are now trying to dig up dirt on them as well, so Sean really needs to calm himself. Sean tells him he knows before he starts to think about how all sorts of lowlifes desire his wife now, since it's been revealed that she is like a gem underneath the bright sun. He notes how he's already holding back as much as he can, but that if the Duke tries anything at the masquerade, then Sean will stop him at all costs. The night continues on at the estate, as Sean is later seen being more calm and thinking about something with his hand to his chin. Sean asks if Hergines really has to go in that dress. Herg then turns as she asks if this is too much or something. We can see that it is a fine black dress, as Sean then says no, and mentions how it's just that she does not need a dress like that to look beautiful. He blushes as he realizes she just looks too good. Herg seems annoyed as she asks if he thought it was easy to get in this dress, since it took her forever. She then tells him they need to go already, as he raises his hand. It is now the party, and we see people with masks and the bright yellow lights. Guys and girls embrace one another, and the violin plays in the background. We see the queen and her aide in a hat as the main couple then comes into the scene. Herg notes how Celia and Count Epernon seem to look humble tonight, so they might be reflecting on their misdeeds. Sean then asks if Hergines wishes to greet the queen. He tells her that if she goes now, then she'll spend the rest of the evening working. The queen then turns her head over, as Hergines and Sean can then be seen walking into an area that is less crowded. She then mentions how they are far from the drinks though. Sean asks if she wants something to drink, or if they should go to the drawing room. She tells him she gets the feeling he's been trying to get her to the drawing room for a while. Sean tells her she caught him and that he can't deny that. He asks if she can see how all eyes are on her and mentions how they will all approach her if he steps away. She then asks who would dare make a move on her when he's with her. They can all tell who he is, to which Sean mentions how no one cares if you have a partner here, and that they won't be as modest as Herginish is. We then see some people making out, as Herg then notes that Sean is right. Sean then tells her that they should see what happens when he goes to get her some drinks. As he leaves, he tells her to not follow any strangers, to which she tells him of course she will not. She has a smile on her face as someone from behind then says, "Excuse me, my lady." She turns her head around as she thinks about how this is the man from before. She slightly remembers that this is Kittensen Roble from the blacksmith shop. He asks her if she is the girl from the other day, to which she gets awkward, as she mentions how he must have recognized her since she was disguised that other time as well. She then asks how she can help him, to which the knight asks what she means. He asks if she still knows who he is. He tells her that he has now come to an understanding after their fateful encounter. He mentions how as time passes he just realizes how valuable her teachings were. Herge glances away as she notes how if Sean comes back now, it'll be bad. Two cups then clatter together as Hergenes then turns her head and notes how it is too late. Hergenes looks at the cups as she notes how they are going to spill. Katenson, who has no idea who anybody is, then tells Sean to let go of the lady now. They both grab her hand, which each have cups in them, as the scene gets even more tense and confusing. Sean then says the person who should be letting go is Katenson. He then pulls his wife closer to himself. Sean tells him that ladies despise a needy man, which causes the knight to grit his teeth in anger. A glove is then slipped out of someone's hand before it is thrown bullseye right at the Count's face. Herge is stunned as the glove then falls right to the floor. There are now chills passing through the room. The mask comes off as Katenson Roble then yells his name and asks, how dare the other guy insult him? He challenges our male lead to a duel. Katenson tells Hergenes he will show her the fruits of his labor, as Hergenes is nervous, and internally notes there is no need to. She also wonders what has him all fired up, as Katenson then turns his head as someone makes a noise. A mask is lifted in the air, as Sean says he is Kyroxus of the House Targale. This leaves the knight stunned, as the people around chatter about how this dude just challenged Lord Kyroxus. Sean then says he accepts the boy's challenge. Hergenes says oh no, as it really is all over now, as Sean is clearly very angry. She notes how it does make sense, as she'd personally want to go full throttle at someone who threw a glove at her as well, but we then see Sean stand over a nervous Katenson who now realizes the situation he's gotten himself into. He trembles as he wonders to himself what he is going to do. Sean then points his thumb as he asks the knight if they should step outside now then. This takes the soul out of Katenson, as his face is full of fear. The queen then appears behind Hergenes as she asks if there is something wrong. Cecilia then tells the queen that this is a custom of their country, and that this is how knights would challenge one another to a duel. The queen then says she is curious to see how skilled the knights of Valois truly are. This prompts both Sean and Katenson to both turn to the queen. Katenson then yells out to Her Majesty and mentions how this is an act where knights put both their pride and honor on the line. He asks if she is dismissing this as an act of mere amusement right now. The queen grins while Hergenes gasps as it appears as though the queen understood that statement. Hergenes thinks about how she knows Katenson is upset, but that was such a crazy thing to say. The cups start to crack as she mentions how he is saying this to the queen of all people. She then sighs as she thinks about how she should have known this guy was out of his mind when he threw a glove at Sean. The queen then